We're still here. But if it's
This meeting of this work session of the Las Cruces Public Schools School Board is now in session. Mr. Castro, will you please take roll?
Mr. Frank,
Here.
is Dolman,
here.
is this Flores,
Here.
Mr. Jaramillo,
Here.
and I'm here, so.
Okay, this is good. And welcome to everybody. This is our first meeting of the school year, a very exciting time. At this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Okay, so it was approved, it was moved by Mr. Jaramillo and seconded by Ms. Dowman. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this motion carries, I believe. The board met in closed executive session on August 7th, 2018, from 3:07 p.m. to 3:58 p.m. to discuss A, limited personnel matters as permitted under Section 10-15-1 H2, specifically so the superintendent can update the board and legal counsel can advise regarding the investigations of certified and classified employees by the superintendent and specific employee movements, and to discuss the superintendent's contract, wages, and other terms and conditions of employment. B, communications with legal counsel regarding pending or threatened litigation as permitted under Section 10-15-1 H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, specifically M, K, and RK, individually and as next friend of HRK, a minor versus Las Cruces Public Schools, D-307 CV-2015-01593. Do you all get that down? And C, communications with legal counsel regarding pending or threatened litigation as permitted under Section 10-15-1 H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, specifically DB, as parent of LB versus Board of Education of Las Cruces Public Schools 2, 17-CV-01232-GJF-SMV. Great fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I get a chance to turn this over to the superintendent.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the board, and to the members of our audience, good afternoon and welcome. I'm going to start first, Mr. President, with a recognition. So I'm going to get Bridget to help me here. We don't want to have our guests to wait too long unless you just want to sit here through this meeting. So Bridget, will you take over and begin the first part of my agenda?
I would be very glad to do so. Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, do you guys know who this gentleman is?
Yeah.
Come up here with me. Mr. Lang has been with us several meetings, but I wanted to take a moment as we start the school year to report out to you two things. One, I wanted to let you know what Oregon Mountain Outfitters has done for our students last school year. So for the fall semester, because of his generosity and the support of our students, we were able to wipe out $2,827 in reduced charges debts for our students. And then in the spring semester, we were able to wipe out $1,897 in reduced charges for our students, for a total of $4,700 and some change. That was for the school year. And then when we sat to celebrate that, Mr. Lang said, "What else do you need?" And we said, "Well, we have a little situation of some kiddos that we let them charge until their meal applications are approved." And he said, "What's that?" And we told him the amount, and he said, "Take care of it." And that amount was $4,629. So for a total, not only does it support our students, but it supports our schools' budgets. They don't have to cover these charges. So we're happy to report that because of Oregon Mountain Outfitters, $9,353 was paid off because of his generosity in his program. Thank you, Mr. Lang. And I have another very exciting announcement. I'm going to steal the thunder from the foundation, but we also sat and we talked about how we wanted this program to last forever. We want Oregon Mountain Outfitters to always be in our schools. So we sat with the foundation, and he has created an endowment with the foundation, made a very nice donation. So we will always have Oregon Mountain Outfitters to support our students, and then we will have money in there to continue to build interest. So whatever he donates also gets interest and helps supports our kids even more. So thank you, Mr. Lang, for your continued support, and we look forward to working with you for a long time. Do you want to say anything?
Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent, thank you guys for allowing our local business to partner with you and your children. I'm humbled. I never thought we'd be here and the way we have. Just thank you to the foundation. It's amazing to think when you do purchase locally that you will basically be giving forever in perpetuity after we're gone. And that's quite an accomplishment, not to us, but to our community and the values that we have in our community, the values of the board and the district. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for the opportunity to celebrate.
Thank you.
Bridget?
We want to come down if we could. Can we?
Oh, I was going to say, yeah.
And then do a picture and can
I
we-
have a question for Mr. Lang and Mr. President, is that okay?
Of course.
Did you go to school here, Mr. Lang?
I did not. I grew up in Cherokee land in
Okay.
Northeast Oklahoma. I grew
Okay.
up in poverty there and on the reduced lunch program as well.
Okay.
And my wife was born and raised here. And
Okay.
yeah, so
All right, thank you. I just wanted to know.
yeah, of course.
I'm very bad at it.
We do well as a team. And may I continue, Mr. President?
Yeah, I just was thinking maybe some board members would like to comment.
Sure, absolutely.
On this amazing community involvement.
Well, I'm happy to thank him again. Where is he at? Did he
left.
go? Oh, did he leave? But, yeah, no. And I've been to his store, and it's amazing. I buy products there for my children as well.
Where is it located?
It's
Let's
just
encourage people
on
as much as
the
possible.
north end of downtown mall on the left-hand side. It's actually almost, you can see the city hall
Okay, and the products
on that end.
that they sell?
T-shirts, caps, what else? Water bottles. Yeah, it's a nice shop. I like it.
Yeah, and it certainly deserves the support of our community because he gives back so much.
Right,
So,
exactly.
well, thank you.
And if I may, real quick, he just launched a new program to support our college students as well at NMSU to support the NMSU cupboard. So he launched that program this weekend with a new shirt, and it has completely sold out. So he's supporting all of our students in the community.
Great.
Great.
Thank you, Bridget. Superintendent.
Yes, sir. Okay, so thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the board, and to the members of our audience. Just want to say today, Dr. Serrano is still wrapping up, but we were at Oñate High School. We had 177 new employees show up. We think we have a few more than that. Want to give thanks to all of you in the audience who were there and helped us. Betsy, I know you spoke after we did. So thank you so much to the staff for a wonderful, productive day just to greet all of our new employees. I also want to say to you, teachers are coming back tomorrow. We're most excited to have them back, have some activities for them. On Thursday, we're running some sessions over at Oñate where all teachers will have an opportunity to meet with me and the members of the executive cabinet so we can personally say thank you for what you do each and every day and just simply meet them. And then on Friday, the Attorney General's office has graciously offered some training that they're going to give to our staff. And we've offered that invitation to all employees in the district. Friday is a work day in your classroom, so teachers certainly have the ability to do whatever they want to do, but all that information is out there for the teachers. I also want to talk about teaching just for a moment. Last year, we used the year as what we called it, the year of leadership, and we really worked on leadership qualities, how we support principals, and how we ourselves become good leaders regardless of our position. This year, the executive cabinet and I are turning our attention to the year of the classroom, the year of teaching, the year of the teacher, and the EA. And so we are very dedicated to doing anything and everything we can to make the life of a teacher even better. And so I'm very pleased to announce this evening that Senator Bill Soules, who is the chair of the Senate Education Committee and a retired educator, has signed a contract with us, and he will be teaching 2 sections of AP Psychology at Oñate High School. And when Senator Soules is absent, I will be the certified substitute in the classroom. So I'm going to return to the classroom with the teachers and work with students each and every day the way our teachers are working throughout the school year. And we want to certainly thank Senator Soules for agreeing to work with us. And I look forward to going back into a high school classroom. And I look forward to working with students in the year 2018 just to see where we are. You've heard me talk before that I teach at night, but that's at the university. But now we're going to go back into the classroom. Adding to that, all of the members of the superintendent's cabinet, so the folks you see here and sitting around the back of the room, all of them will be returning to schools. They will be finding a teacher, and they're going to teach a lesson in a classroom. So all of us are going to return to our roots as teachers just to see what it's like to deliver a lesson and to work with students on a daily basis. And so for us, having Dr. Sanchez recently return from a middle school classroom of 3 years, he's reminding us of some things that we may have forgotten. So all of us are most excited to return to the classroom. We're excited to support teachers and EAs. I'm now going to ask for an update from the Las Cruces Public Schools Foundation, and Dr. Moorhead is here with us.
Thank you all very much.
And I think it's what a better segue than to have a Dean Emeritus of the College of Education come and talk. So Dr. Moorhead, welcome. And Mr. President, with permission, Dr. Moorhead would like to give a presentation on the foundation to the board.
Let's turn it over.
Well, thank you very much, President Frank and members of the board and Superintendent Ewing for the opportunity to talk to you about the Las Cruces Public School Foundation. And I'm very, very impressed by the conversation about returning to the classroom and focusing on teaching for the upcoming year. So Dr. Ewing, your leadership and others within the district really will make a difference for the children in our community. The board is about obviously raising money to support the schools and teachers in a variety of ways. I'd like to thank Ms. Dahlman for her work this year with us. We appreciate what you've done, greatly appreciate that, and so on. And we want to thank the school board particularly for the professional service agreement contract that you've allocated a certain amount of dollars to support the Las Cruces Public School Foundation over the last many years. We believe we've been good stewards of those dollars, and we're going to show you through our report tonight that we feel like that there's been a real payoff in the allocation of the funds that you've given to us, and so on. And then to Dr. Ewing, thank you very much for your gifts. I think that big salary you received from DACC, right? You're giving that as a gift. I'll talk to President Scott to see if we can maybe improve that a little bit and increase that, and so on. So let's get into the bulk of the presentation and so on. First of all, we have two individuals that work directly for us as paid employees. We have Betsy Gary, all of you are familiar with her and the work that she's done. And then we have Michael Valenzuela, who is working for us as well, part-time. We took the money that you allocated, we took the little bit of money that we have been able to allocate, and we split that between the two of them. So we actually have two people working for us now for the same amount of money that's been allocated the first couple of years for Betsy's contract. And that was under actually a recommendation from her so that she could focus a little bit more on grant writing, and then we could use Michael to actually work with us on raising and increasing the endowment. And we're going to show you some of those figures in just a minute. I don't know if you have the information in front of you. The organization was started in 1998, and it's been it's a nonprofit 501c3. Okay. These are the members of the board. You can see many of them many of them are past teachers, but many of them have some type of tie to education as well. And we'd like to thank Bridget for her excellent work in partnering with us over the last couple of years. She's been a remarkable resource and a person that actually helps guide us in terms of maybe some of the decision making along the way and so on. And then we have David Beasley, who is our treasurer, or Beasley Mitchell, with us, and he's here today. And if you have any questions about money, he's the person you want to ask, not me, okay? All right. Let me just give you a kind of an example of what happened. Originally, you had identified a person 0.5 to work with us, and we estimated that FTE at about $76,000. Half time, the allocation of that person's time would have been about $38,000 with benefits. When we went to the professional service agreement or that contract, you allocated $28,000, which included paying the gross receipt tax. Fast forward a couple years later, the economy continued to struggle, budgets continued to be limited, as we all well know, so you reduced the allocation to $25,000, and we increased our allocation to about $12,000. Now, the endowment has about $300,000 in actual endowed money. That's all. So it doesn't have a lot of resources. If you do the 4% allocation, that's about $13,000 of money that we can use on an annual basis from the endowed funds. That said, most of those are directed by the people who set the endowments up. We do have some flexibility with the French fund, so that allows us to be able to pay part of the salaries for the two individuals, Michael and Betsy, that work with the board in terms of raising money. Here are some of the things that we do. We do off-cycle requests. We support the superintendent's office. So a couple of things I want to highlight here. I'm not going to go into all of these, but the grant writing has increased substantially under Betsy's time with us. And she has made amazing progress in writing grants for special projects and for schools as they come to her. We also have increased the actual endowment dollars directly allocated for scholarships over the last 2 years or 18 months with the bringing on of Michael Valenzuela. So I think we've started to see some real increase in opportunities by the foundation with the partnership and the team that we brought together and the group that works to support this. Here are what would be an off-cycle request fund. We would get a request from a school or a community agency that's working with our children to support an initiative. And for example, we help support a couple of children going to the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Conference. This past year, a faculty member from BCOM, this is not on here, but a faculty member from BCOM did an ACT prep training. the tuition was like $100. These prep trainings cost typically anywhere from thousands to $3,000 depending on the level and the quality. Dr. Sam Kalakavua, who is a faculty member at BCOM and DACC, put this on, and our board decided to allocate scholarship for about 10 students at $100 apiece. So that's the kind of off-cycle request we might get. And then we have a superintendent's fund that's at about $750 a year. We'd like to obviously increase that to support superintendent's office in doing staff recognitions and so on. If you look at the teacher mini grants, or the types of grants that the group initially started with, these are grants to go to classrooms for innovative projects. And you notice they run between $28,000 and $30,000 a year of allocation. And that's basically money that we raise each year through a variety of activities we'll show you in a minute, where we then turn around and return to teachers. The impact on students is between $2,000 and $2,500 a year. So we actually give out about, the grants to about 40 different teachers for innovative projects and so on. We also have increased the endowment from $30,000 to $50,000 in the last couple of years, and we awarded scholarships of over $9,000 last year to students. We work with Comcast Cares, and we work with Bridget, who's done a remarkable job in highlighting this and moving this forward each year. And the money that comes in goes to the foundation. Half that money is returned to the schools. The other half is returned to support teachers and students through the various foundation activities and so on. That's a 3-year total that you've seen there in the last 3 years. And then you're all familiar with a dinner that we provide every year. The net income to the foundation last year was just a little over $8,000. That money goes into the pool to support mini grants and other activities and student scholarships. If you look at the 4-year grant writing process, you notice how that's increased from $5,000 to almost $290,000 in grant requests, and we actually received this past year $77,000 in grant funding that supports teachers. The year before, we received $61,000 in grant. Bulk of that's from the Stocker Foundation, but there are other grants that have been written, and we're seeking funding to support schools and students and children. And then if you look at the top sheet here, it tells you which grants were awarded. If you look at the bottom, those are grants. Some of them have not been awarded, but others are still pending. One of them is actually to support the community schools program that's recently been initiated by the Las Cruces Public Schools. And you can see that we're continuing to increase the grant writing with Betsy's leadership. And so the 4-year total, you can see there's $197,000 for the last 3 or 4 year total. So this one's supposed to come up. Okay. The other thing that happened recently is the Mesilla Valley. Is this thing still on? What's that? Okay, there we are. The other thing that's happened here is that Mesilla Valley Transit is for the 3rd year sponsoring a golf tournament. And that golf tournament, the first 2 years, they actually handpicked the foundations to support. This past year, they sent out an RFP. The Las Cruces Public Schools Foundation applied. Myself, Bridget, and Betsy went over to present our case, and they selected us as their representative to raise funds through this golf tournament. It's incredibly successful, and we're anticipating about $40,000 of new money to come into the program and so on. So we get through this, okay? Oh, back one. Okay. And so the total value for the $25,000 that was allocated by the Las Cruces Public Schools this year, we generated about $160,000. And if you look over a 3 or 4 year period, about $80,000 through the PSA, and we generated $378,000 to support children, students, and schools in our community. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you at this time. I'm going to ask now each of you to consider doing some type of sponsorship with the upcoming scholarship, upcoming golf tournament. So I'm going to give this to Gabe. I'm going to ask Gabe to form a team from the superintendent's office to play in the golf tournament. And I'm going to give this to each board member, and you can determine what you would like to give to help support the opportunity for, and you can maybe sponsor a whole, or the whole board can sponsor a whole, or maybe you can sponsor a team, in whatever way you would like to do it. So, as the president of the board, my job is to ask for donations, and I've done my job today. All right, so I'll try to answer any questions that you might have, or obviously Betsy and David would as well. So, any questions you might have?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
President
Yes.
Frank. Dr. Moorhead, could you tell us how much of the 160,000 is in kind and how much is cash, actual cash that comes into the district?
Almost all of it's cash. It's all cash. We actually received an in-kind gift from the, well, it was actually, the Mountain View paid for the dinners. And so that would be, but that was still cash that they paid for the dinners for during the recognition award dinner. So Mountain View paid for all the meals.
Okay.
So all of this is cash.
Thank you.
You know, I'm not sure how we would manage horses, cows, farms, ranches, things like that. I would not want to try to take that on.
I have a question about the golf. I mean, golf is not one of my skill sets, but I would still
You don't play.
like to make some kind of contribution. So how would that go about doing that?
You can sponsor a hole.
Okay.
The Las Cruces Public School Board can put their name on a couple of holes for a couple of $100. That's you can certainly do that, and we would greatly appreciate that
Okay.
that
So I
recognition.
just fill this thing out and,
No, well, I think they said there's something on there that says something about hole sponsors. Yeah, you have to look carefully. Yeah, and
okay.
Dr. Sanchez said he definitely wants to sponsor a team and lead the team playing golf. He said that's one of his favorite priorities. He wants Gabe to immediately ask him to be the A player of the golf tournament.
Okay, all in favor of Dr. Sanchez?
Yes, yes, exactly right. How you like
In
that?
his shorts
In
and a
his
polo
shorts,
shirt?
yeah.
That's
The
exactly
white
right.
shirt.
Yes.
That's right.
With a white shirt.
Any other questions for me today? I know you've got an amazing schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to serve on the board. It's been a true pleasure and will continue to be so. And I want to, again, thank Betsy, Michael, and Bridget for the great work that they do supporting us. Okay? Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And now, Mr. President, permission to continue?
Yes, of course.
So now, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the board, and to the members of our audience, I'm going to ask for the Nea Las Cruces Report, if I see that, yes. And Mr. Greenberg is going to be giving the report, and are we allowed to announce? Can you tell us? What? Yes. Okay, so Mr. Greenberg is representing NEA this evening.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ewing. Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ewing, President Albertson couldn't be here tonight, and the announcement Dr. Ewing was alluding to, unfortunately, Wendy broke her femur. So she is up and getting better. So we just like to appreciate everyone who's sending their well wishes, and she is on her way to recovery. She's getting excellent medical care, but she is taking it easy. So we'd like to just announce that Denise Corrales, our NEA Las Cruces Vice President, will be assuming the role of the president temporarily while Wendy gets better and back on her feet. So that's really it for our update this evening. Just wanted to give you that, and then again, appreciate as always the district's allowing NEA Las Cruces to participate in the new employee orientation. It was a terrific success. So thanks, everyone.
And Mr. Greenberg, if I talked to Wendy, so on Thursday we are at Oñate, the executive cabinet and I. If you all want to set a table up in the back of the room with any type of literature or information on how to join
Terrific.
NEA.
Excellent.
We're also going to have, I think we've invited the EAs, and so Miss Irma, is she in the room? Could you also let Miss Irma know
Will do.
to have the CSEC brochures there as well?
Absolutely.
And
We'll be
we
there.
will be happy to introduce you, and I will even
Terrific.
encourage folks to speak to you about
Excellent.
what the organization can offer them.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think once President Wendy is feeling better, maybe Dr. Wendy will get together and try to go make a visit. And if you could ask if there's something that we can do on our behalf. And now I'm going to turn, is there a representative from CSEC here tonight? So I know Ms. Irma was at the program today, and so we'll invite her back next week. Next on the agenda is school security. Before we move, I just want to recognize a couple of visitors in the audience this evening. Dr. Sanchez is asking me to make sure that we recognize. So first, Mary Garcia, would you just stand for us? Mary is one of our retired teachers. I had asked her to go with me this morning to all new employees and say, this is what happens after you serve 30 years in the district. And she's still happy and she's still coming to events. And she's also still guiding Dr. Sanchez and myself. So thank you for coming tonight. And thank you for continuing to support us, especially in the gifted program. And then Dr. Amanda, are you over there? So I just want to say welcome. We're glad you're here this evening. I did reach out to her. If you were watching the media, there was a fire in Redding, California, and this is where Mary's daughter was living, working for the Forest Service. And so there was considerable destruction. And one of the things that we talked about doing was how could we support the animals who are now in foster care and animal shelters. And so Dr. Amanda has been working with me, and we're trying to see if we can find out which organization there or which animal shelter there we could call and say, here's some support from us. And yes. Oh, you do? Okay. So if you send that to me, then I'll send that out to the staff. And so I just want to thank you for your continued support. And now moving on to school security, Amanda was with me a few days ago. We were in Albuquerque, and so we attended, President Frank and I, a seminar on school security given to us by the Palms and Associates organization that works here in New Mexico. And so they actually gave us a clinical forensic psychologist who worked with us on what to look for in individuals who may cause issues within school buildings. Our counseling psych team members were there. Our public safety folks were there. It was very, very worthwhile training. And so, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, and members of the board, I do want to announce you did approve in the budget, and I thank you for approving this, positions for security guards in all schools. We've posted those positions, and we're very hopeful that on the first day of school, we'll have a security guard in every school building. We're working to get to that final point. Also want to remind folks that we have police officers in all high schools and all middle schools. And so we'll continue to work through that. We did talk with principals about school security of keeping doors locked, challenging folks who are coming into school buildings, using badges as they come in, having a sign-in procedure. And Mr. Jaquez is working with his team to create what we call a barrier in the front of each school building, so that when someone comes into a school building, they can't get past the front office. And as you leave this evening, you're going to see we're even doing that here, creating a barrier in this building. And then to get past the door, you'll have to scan your ID to go any further in this building. We're just trying to protect all employees, regardless of where they work, and all children in school. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the board, as we progress through the school year, we will talk to you again about our policy on guns. I have been very vocal that we are not arming teachers with weapons in the classroom. Teachers are here to teach. I've also been very vocal that there's only two people to shoot in a school building. That's a teacher or a student. And I use the word teacher to encompass any employee. But we are most thankful to the police departments of Mesilla and Las Cruces for providing us a police officer in every high school and every middle school. And Mr. President, with that, I'm going to stand for questions in the event any board members have questions for me.
Board, any questions? I said we're going to move on then.
Okay, then.
Mr. President,
Oh,
I was just going to say, Dr. Ewing, I don't know, will we be able to get cards?
We will need to change your badges.
Yeah, okay. 'Cause
So,
we can't,
yes. And so, and I'm happy to do that.
This one doesn't open anything, does it?
Yeah, we haven't,
We don't open anything.
we haven't given you access to anything.
I,
But if, at the request of Senora Flores, we will be happy
Trying and
to.
trying.
So I'm going to look, Mr. Jaquez, can you work on that?
I did
And
trick
so-
President Frank one time. The door was actually open, but I pretended like I scanned mine and I went through. And the next time
Now-
he went, he scanned it and it didn't work. So he's a little upset that mine works and his doesn't. So
We do need to remind the
To
public that
watch this guy.
one of the duties of the board is to ensure the physical buildings here in Las Cruces and to ensure that they are sound and that we're keeping up with property. And so, Mr. Jaquez, if you would go ahead and authorize, we're going to change out your badges, and actually this becomes a master key. And so it'll open any electronic lock in the district. And then if you were to misplace this, if you will contact us, we can turn it off immediately. So Mr. Jaquez will work on that. And Ed, I'm sure you can find a few dollars to pay for these new badges and, all right, just checking. Okay, so, Mr. President, if that,
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo, for bringing that up. That's an
Yes.
important point. Are we ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
I think it's Dr. Sanchez is going to talk to us about assessment trend data report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ewing. The superintendent asked me to provide an aggregate report to you this evening on our trend data. What is it looking like? And as you know, we have always said one assessment doesn't tell the entire picture. We use not only formative assessments, we use qualitative and quantitative assessments. I'll be talking to you a little bit about the quantitative assessments that we have available for you. And so here we have your park proficiency by subject. On the left-hand side, we have the district proficiencies. And the thing that impresses me about this is you can see where we started and in 2015 and where we are now as a district in the latest reporting in 2018 in language arts. There has been a steady increase, which is a compliment to our instructional staff across the district. Next to it, our mathematics numbers are a little bit lower, but still you see the same kind of increase in mathematics, where we started in 15 at 16.9 and we are now at 20.9. So that again is a nice growth rate. What I provided for you on the right-hand side is so you can compare with the state average. And you can see that there's no statistical difference in the way LCPS students are performing against the statewide average in both English language arts and mathematics. The next chart for you here is your park 2-year, 3-year, and 4-year overall change. And what you can start to see in the overall change is the increasing numbers in students who are proficient. English language arts being on the left, mathematics being on the right. And what impresses me about these data are that our students ranking in the not proficient are decreasing as well. So we're very, very happy to see those numbers. And what I've provided for you are the actual numbers of students represented in those boxes rather than percents. So you can see that. And then again, there's some information on the statewide averages. Park proficiency by performance level. This is a little easier to look at if you look at the 2015, say for English language arts. You can see the number of students that were proficient in the green at the top and exceeds proficiency. Dr. Wendy, what? Expectations, there you go. And you can see how our numbers are starting to increase as we go from year to year. So this tells the real story of students, not just percents, but the numbers of students who are scoring in those areas, which again, is commendable. We've gone from 3,000 to a little over 4,000 kids in that. And the same for English language arts. You can see by the time we get to 2018, we see that green and blue at the top showing some increases, and at the same time, the red at the bottom where kids are below proficiency on the decline. So again, there is another look at these data. And here we have for mathematics, you can see the same kind of performance, again, in mathematics, and by the number and also by percentage. So we see the increase at, let's say we have 13,800 total students in 2018, 2,241 are in the green, and we've increased to 2,905. So that tells us kids, real kids, are doing much better. And then you can see the increasing percents, and of course the decreasing percents down at the bottom. If we look at another way, how are our students doing in general, because we don't just focus on the park, the Sba Science Trend Report paints a very interesting picture at 4th grade. We see a decrease. We started to see a decrease in performance. Now we're starting to see an increase again at the 4th grade level. And here's some good news about our mathematics science instruction at the middle school. We see a nice increase again at the middle school level. And I'd like to remind the board that Dr. Wendy Miller-Tomlinson a few years ago actually switched over to the new science standards in reconstructing the middle school curriculum. All of the middle school kids are coming to the Challenger Center. We have an online curriculum component, and I think we're starting to see the benefits of that implementation. We're concerned about the high school, and to tell you some of the discussions that we've had, the superintendent has asked us to look at the curriculum that's available. All of it's been transformed to the new national standards that were adopted by the state, and all of this is available online, and we'll be doing a presentation for you on the change in curriculum. The next slide is the Sba Spanish in Reading. And we can see in 16 and 17, we have 2 years of data on this. I don't have a lot of historical data. The percent proficient, 22. This year we increased. And we look at the numbers of students. So last year it was 364. This year there are 416 children who are proficient on the Spanish reading component of the SBA. The Access Trend Data Report looked a little troubling to me, but I went to my colleague, Dr. Lozano, and asked him to explain to the board what happened in 15-16 to 16-17, and then share some good news with you about this. Dr. Lozano?
Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent. So if you recall in May, I believe we did a presentation for the bilingual department when we did talk about what happened last year. As you see, there was a significant decline from 15-16 to 16-17. So I went through my files and said, when were we informed of a change in the assessment? And we received a memo on June 28th, 2017, from the PED department informing us that the assessment that had been administered, typically I believe it starts in January into about March, there was a change in the scoring for the speaking component of the access score. Just to backtrack a little bit, access is for those students that are identified as English learners, and they take this assessment every year. This is a widely used assessment in many other states, I believe Georgia being one where Dr. Ewing was at before. So I guess in summary, the decline is related to the change in scoring for the speaking component of it. Those of you that recall in previous years, the speaking was always the one that our students did really good in. Last year, when they made the change, that's when we saw significant declines. Good news is we obviously have more kids that are that became proficient overall. That has a lot of implications for our students, some good, some bad. Previous email, Dr. Sanchez went over the Sba Spanish Reading. So those are for students that that are English learners and they're stronger in Spanish, so they take it in Spanish. When a student passes access, then they're supposed to take it in English. As we all know, language doesn't work as easily as it sounds, right, when we are acquiring language. So it may be that some students request a waiver because when we're testing them for reading or science or math, we want to make sure that we're testing the content and not their language ability. So just keeping that in mind. So again, the change was due to the more rigorous standards that were applied to the test. The test didn't change. It was the same test. Basically, the cut scores were, it was a lot harder for kids to become proficient. Good news is Dr. Han received a phone call, I believe, a few weeks ago from the Public Education Department congratulating our district for the gains that we've made on access, and also informing us that overall the growth, not just kids becoming proficient, but the growth within each level was very high in comparison to other districts. So that's good news. They haven't done any official announcements or anything, but they did express their excitement and wanted to know what we were doing down here with our English learners. So that was good news. Do you have any questions on this particular slide or regarding access?
Thanks for explaining it, because obviously it's very scary, looking at it. And it certainly needed explanation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got phone calls, Mr. President, when scores came out, and it was a scary time for principals. And for me, I said, oh my God, what happened? But there was an explanation, and I think we were a little more prepared this year, not only prepared just for the test, but I think an emphasis on making sure that we're doing everything we can as a district to support our English learners. So thank you so much.
Given the fact that we exceeded the state growth here in Las Cruces, I'm sure the Secretary of Education will be contacting the superintendent to do a press conference here.
We're looking forward
A
to that.
sticker on the newspaper?
I look forward to it.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm going to finish off this presentation with our district graduation rate because I think this is a celebration. Again, when you look at student data, when you look at testing, you don't just look at one test, you look at trends over time. I think we've seen that our kids are on a gradual increase, a steady increase. It's all about growth. But our district graduation rate, I think, is something to really celebrate here. And you can see that the Las Cruces schools with a graduation rate in 2017 of 85.5% is above the national average. And it certainly is above the state average. You see the little yellow hats or the state of 71%. So things are working right in the district. And I want to applaud Dr. Ewing and his leadership, and Dr. Wendy and her tremendous leadership in the instruction area, because it just seems to be working well. And I'm very, very proud to be back with a team that is focused on kids and focused on student achievement. With that, Madam President, we will, Mr. President, you see, I told you I was going to do that. I got very used to saying Madam President. Mr. President, when the school grades come out, we'll have more information for you that will give us more school-wide data. But in this presentation, I just wanted to focus on the aggregate growth that we're seeing in the district. With that, Mr. President, I'll stand for any questions that you may have, or my team.
Yes. Questions?
I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Dr. Sanchez, the comparisons that we're making, it's a district against the state, right?
Correct.
Only.
Only.
Not nationwide.
Correct.
Because there's only 6 states that are taking the park at this point.
That is absolutely correct.
We're one of them. Okay, so it's just in-state
Right.
comparisons. Okay.
Mr. President. Yes. Mr. Jaramillo.
Please, Dr. Sanchez, thank you for the report. I'll try to be brief too, but what I want to say is that I do not want to take anything away from the numbers that were there. Definitely positive, that sort of stuff. But with that being said, anybody that knows me or has seen any kind of social media posts that I'm not a big fan of the park assessment. One of the things that I want to be cautious with is, the teacher evaluation system has set up in a way where it's kind of skewed these datas for me personally. So, for instance, when they based the teacher evaluation on the sick days, and all of a sudden there was less sick days, doesn't mean that people were getting sick less. It means that people were going to work sick. So, one of the things I want to be cautious with is that, although our testing numbers are going up, what could that mean as well? So what this could mean is, are these numbers based on development of inappropriate practices that we are doing to better make our children into robots? Or are we really truly do this? So not to take away from that. I want to make sure that I do not take away from that. But I also want to be cautious, because I think if we had a valid system, a valid assessment tool, these numbers could be different. And like Dr. Lozano said, when the evaluation tool gets changed a little bit, or something gets changed a little bit, we go from 17 to 1. We could also do it the other way if we changed it, right? We could also choose. So I want to be cautious with that, because, like I said, we're not teachers all of a sudden from one year to the next are not getting sick less. They're just showing up to work less, and yet the state, the public education department says, "Oh my goodness, look what we've done here." And so I just want to say that I am not a fan of Park when we are not able to use that data in a way where we could learn from it, because of the way that assessment is, it's invalid to me. And so I just wanted to say that publicly, and that be my personal statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Jaramillo, I agree with you 100%, and I think that's why the superintendent has asked us as the instructional team to really not use any one assessment as the truth. We have to look at multiple factors, and that's why we'll start to look at qualitative indicators, how kids are doing in school, are they happy in school, because that's just important as test results. And of course, we want to make sure kids know how to read as well. So, but I appreciate your comments. And Mr. Superintendent, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I would, before the superintendent, I mean, if as a teacher, if my class ended up with a 20% proficiency rate, I would be either concerned about what I taught or the assessment itself. And I mean, so, and I think I'm pretty sure in this case, I'm certain it's the assessment. There's something very, very flawed in this assessment. But, nevertheless, what I think is encouraging is we are making incremental progress, and we're doing it at the same time where everybody on the dais up here is telling our people to not teach to the test. So I think we're definitely on the right road.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah. Yes, Ms. Senor.
I thank Mr. Jaramillo for bringing up the cost of the work that is being done on the backs of the teachers. I think that we lost several teachers last year. The stress and the fact that they're not able to take time off is taking a toll on our teachers. And so I think that as we start the new school year, we hope that if they are not feeling well, that they will seek medical care and take care of themselves first, because then what happens is, as we lost several teachers last year, those classes were left without their teachers, and we don't want that to be happening either. So thank you, Mr. Jaramillo, for bringing that point up. It's a deadly thing.
Yeah, and it's bad, but I think a lot due to the pressure that this school board has put on the PED with regard to attendance, it has gone from 10% to 5%. It's still too much, and we need to still put the pressure on because it's a highly inappropriate component of teacher evaluation.
So, Mr. President,
Somebody else speak.
Madam Vice President, members of the board, I'll just remind our audience and our teaching force, I have said repeatedly that we will never give a teacher a negative evaluation from our own perspective just simply based on test scores. Because test scores alone don't tell you the picture in the classroom. A test score is one data point on one particular day at one particular time in a classroom. And then you can easily make the analogy, if you go to the hospital and you're complaining of chest pains, then the first thing they're going to do is give you an EKG. And in our case, with the test that we're giving the same test no matter what the diagnosis is of the student. And I have argued repeatedly that this is probably not the best assessment for us to be using. And then we certainly want to echo to teachers. I have often said, take care of yourself and take care of your family. These school buildings will always be here. All of us will be here. President Wendy is probably a great example. We're encouraging her to recover from her broken leg, to take the time that she needs, go through the physical therapy that she needs, and we will cover for her while she's out. And then when she returns, she can pick up teaching and be the great teacher that she is. And so we want to say to all of our employees, take care of yourself. And this is not to be disparaging to anyone who has worked very diligently for these test scores. And I do want to thank the testing department. I'm looking for Ruby back there, who put all this together. It's a beautiful presentation and great information for us. Once we have a better instrument, I think we could enjoy looking at this quantitative data even better. Right. And until then, I like to look at the qualitative data. Teachers, principals, students, and parents already tell us the story of a classroom. And we get a much bigger picture from the qualitative story than we do from this quantitative story. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I've said it, Dr. Ewing, I've said it twice, and I'll say it one more time. I do not want my statement to be taken at a negative way. I do not want to take away from the hard work that's happening inside the schools and that sort of stuff. I just want to let, I guess, the schools, the teachers, the educators that are here, that I will continue to fight from my chair to make sure that they are really, truly being valued for what they're really, truly doing. And so that's what I want to say, is that I'm going to be committed while I'm here and I'm sitting at this chair on behind this dais, is that that's what I want to give to them, not to take away from what is happening into the work that's happening in the district. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, and any more questions, board? Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. Okay, we're now going to go into the exciting world of finance, and we're going to hear from Mr. Ellison.
Well, don't get too excited. His only word is no, so.
Yes.
You said yes. Oh, Gabe, did we get
Good
that
afternoon.
recorded? Yes.
Recorded.
Just play it, everyone.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. This afternoon, we have RBC Capital Markets, who will give a presentation on our financial plan. And as you know, we've had a long-standing relationship with RBC, and they've been good advisors to us and have helped us through many bond cycles and sales. And they do a great amount of work for us, and they're a great firm. You may know Paul Cassidy, who used to be the bond advisor for us. He retired, but he did leave us in great hands with Mr. Eric Harrigan, who has worked for him for a number of years. And Mr. Harrigan is taking over that responsibility. He also works with the city, and so we are very comfortable with that. And with that, I will ask Mr. Harrigan to come up, and he'll go over the financial plan with you. It says we're getting ready to do our bond sale in September, and so we'll start that tonight. So.
Thank you, Ed. Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. And I'm here to talk about the upcoming plan of finance, and at your next regularly scheduled board meeting, we'll have a resolution and a notice of sale for your consideration. And as I go through the information, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me and ask them, and we can work through those. Just to talk a little bit about your election timing, you recently had a successful Geo Bond Election of $50 million earlier this year. And the first sale of that coming up at $12.5 million, expected to be sold later this year in September, and then $12.5 million sales over the next 3 years after that, or as the district needs funds and as your debt service tax mill levy allows it. You had a 2 mill levy election in February of 2016, and that will expire in 2024. And so we have a little bit of time until we have to start to worry about the timing of that election. But the other thing that I did want to talk about is your HB 33 bond election. So it was originally scheduled to occur in February of 2020. And I think, as you're all very well familiar, that this last legislative session, House Bill 98 was passed, signed by the governor, which changed the election law fairly significantly, especially for school districts, which moved your regularly scheduled board election from February to November in odd years. It did have a number of impacts, and one of it was had to do with your mill levy elections. Because of how because the election will actually take place after property taxes have been set, which occurs in September. It puts that election law at odds with the mill levy statutes, which says that if you want to hold an election, you have to file the election resolution with the Public Education Department by May 15th in the year in which the tax is to be imposed. If you file the election resolution by May 15th but have the election in November, that tax doesn't get imposed until the following year. So they're at odds with each other right now, which means that you would have to hold a special election. HB 98 also amended the special election process, which requires an all mail-in ballot election. That cost would be borne by the district unless there was any other governmental entity that would take part in that special election, but that cost would be borne by the district. Now, our understanding is that this is something that the legislature is aware of and is going to attempt to fix at the next legislative session, which hopefully what that means is that instead of having a special election in February of 2020, you would be able to have the the HB 33 election at your November 2019 regular board election, which would not cost the district any extra to hold that mill levy at your regular board election. But those are some of the things that we'll be coming back and talking to you probably in the early point of next year about strategies and timing of that HB 33 election. From a bond maturity schedule and specifically to the 2018 bonds that we'll be selling, it'll be sold with a 16-year maturity, which is consistent with what the district has sold recently. The maximum is 20 years under state statute, and that we also have rapidly declining debt service to allow the district to continue to layer in additional bonds and additional elections without increasing the debt service tax rate. So on page 2 of the presentation, this is a history of assessed valuation. I think as most of you know, this is important for a couple of reasons. One, it drives how much debt the school district can have outstanding at any point in time. It's set at 6% of your assessed valuation. And the second important component is that the growth dictates how much debt you are able to retire within that year given your existing tax rate. The more growth you have in your assessed value, the faster you're able to mature and retire your debt under that tax rate. Conversely, the slower your assessed valuation grows, the less the amount of debt that you can mature, which can create future, which can create capacity issues in the future. Looking at your 5-year and 10-year average assessed value, you've grown about 2.68% over the last 5 years. We're actually starting to see some good growth come back to the district, over 3% last year, and based upon preliminary assessed values this year, 3.6%. This is preliminary because it does exclude any protested property values. But this is the tax rate that will be, or excuse me, this will be the assessed value that is used to set your tax rate for the upcoming year. So, hence, your final assessed valuation will go up ever so slightly once that final value comes out in the October timeframe. On page 3, this is the detail of your capacity. You have existing general obligation bonds outstanding, less the 2018 issuance, and less your lease purchase obligations. The district is about 75% bonded capacity. You have capacity to issue these bonds and the remaining voter authorized bonds from this election earlier this year. On page 4, on your history of tax rates, the issuance of the 2018 bonds, will continue to maintain the district's $4.60 tax rate. From a timing standpoint, on the following page, on page 5, at your August 21st board meeting, that's when we'll have a resolution before you for consideration for the sale of your $12.5 million of Geo bonds to be sold at a competitive sale on or about September 12th. We want to try to get ahead of the Federal Reserve meeting, which is taking place on September 21st and September 22nd. We are currently scheduled to have bond rating calls on or around August 29th. And then closing would be mid-October, where the funds would be available for the district to expend on the project. I've got a little bit of information on the market, but I might pause there and see if there are any questions from the board.
Yeah, just to clarify, so we're going to sell $12 million worth in September of the $50 million that we have available over a 5-year period.
That's $12.5 million is what's currently scheduled for a 4-year period.
Okay, great.
So going on to a market update, even though we've seen increase in interest rates this year, there still continues to be significant demand for municipal bonds. We like this chart here. The dark blue shows inflows into municipal bond funds, and as you can see, over the last 6 weeks, with the exception of 1 week, there continued to be inflow. What has been particularly resilient is the actual inflow of foreign monies into municipal debt in the U.S. because interest rates in Germany and Japan, Switzerland are very low. They're looking for value, and they're finding that in municipal debt. So you're continuing to see foreign dollars flow into the municipal markets in the United States. From an interest rate standpoint, we saw a pretty significant increase in interest rates earlier this year, and we've hit a bit of a plateau, if you will. We've traded within that same range for roughly the past 6 to 7 months. But when you take a look at interest rates from a historical standpoint, interest rates still remain very, very attractive. And we anticipate that the district will be able to achieve good interest rates at its bond sale in September. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. Board members, questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I guess the next item on the agenda is the update on the summer approvals by the superintendent.
We removed that.
We removed that. Okay,
Yes,
it was on there. We asked for that to be removed. Just to give you a word, since it's there, we'll be bringing those approvals or the summer approvals to you for ratification at the regular scheduled meeting on the 21st.
Okay.
We will definitely look forward to that.
Right.
We had listed those, but we decided to move it to the 9th since it would be an action item. I would give Ed a little bit more time, but if you remember, you gave me authorization in July. So we're going to come back in front of you and just report to you anything that we authorized so you can see that and ask Ed any questions you have.
If that, I'll stand for any questions. If not, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much.
And coming to the podium is Deputy Superintendent Hawkes.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent. We're still afternoon, I guess, not evening yet, or in the middle of that. Great to see everybody. Hope everybody had a wonderful July. My first agenda item that I wanted to go over is just a quick update on some of the projects that were ongoing this summer to let you know kind of where we're at with that. So as I go through the projects that I wanted to share with you, so Tombaugh, we had some issues, just for your information, with some bats that moved in last year, and so we got them evacuated and relocated, actually, humanely. We got in there, cleaned out walls, new sheetrock, the whole 9 yards. So this summer, we still had some smell issues that lingered. It was in the HVAC system, so we got new ductwork done, we got new HVAC work done. Most recently, a couple weeks ago, we found some bat excrement that was still lingering between this small little area in certain spaces between the roof and the ceiling. So we brought our company in again and got that taken care of. And Tombaugh is good to go. And
Can you tell us what location of the building?
So all I do know, I'm not very familiar with, but I know it's Roberto's old classroom area is where that's at. So.
Okay, room 19.
Room 19, so I apologize for that, but I don't know what you all were doing back then, but hey.
They were looking for you.
Guano is good for the environment, so.
So,
It's
Mr.
good, yeah, good fertilizer.
Absolutely, yes ma'am, yes
Mr.
sir.
Deputy, I'm just gonna, Gloria, are you back there? So when school starts, would you do me a favor on the first day of school and just go to room 19? Make sure the teacher is okay, and if there's any issues, work with the principal to relocate the teacher. Do your construction inspection and make sure that you feel safe with what we're doing.
Absolutely. And so my next item, Mr. President, members of the board, is Jornada. So we came in Jornada, and they were the only school that we did furniture, a complete furniture replacement on this summer. But before that, we came in, we did have some asbestos that we knew about, so we quarantined everything off, got our experts in there, and got that taken care of. I was there today with members of my team. It looks absolutely amazing. That old dark tile, we replaced it with some white tile, added some color to that. It really brightened up the hallways for kids. The new furniture looks absolutely amazing. And of course, teachers have already been in there and set up their classrooms, and the custodians were working really hard. So Jornada looks good. Met with the principal, they're off and running. Crossroads, we had a plumbing issue in the middle of the old building where the gas is from the pipe, so it's original pipe and it's cast iron. They corroded through the pipes, and I believe I shared that with you right before we left. But we went in there and we took care of that, broke up the floor, got that done. And the last report I had, and I will be swinging by tomorrow, is that we're good to go for students and staff here shortly. So they did a great job with that, and we should be up to date with that. Macarthur road construction. So the city of Las Cruces did a lot of work, and we were just over there with unfortunately the copper situation that we had. And so we had 13 units that were vandalized at Macarthur. They actually came and took parts off of the air conditioners, but they got into our units and took parts from within the units. So they totally damaged 13 units at Macarthur. Our physical plant team got on that, and we had some units that we had set aside from the old Cruces High that were still good. So we were able to retrofit those as of Friday of last week. We had 10 were up and running. We were missing 3 that needed some parts, and That hopefully will be in this week. We're following up with them again, but if nothing else, we have a plan. We have portable air conditioners for those 3 classrooms to make sure they're comfortable for teachers and kids when they come in. So, but my understanding is those parts will be in, so fingers crossed. Also, the road construction, City of Las Cruces has guaranteed us that that would be done. Last week it looked pretty, still looked pretty rough in that area, but we'll keep following up with them and make sure that gets done. And a side note, we did purchase a piece of property there last year, if you recall. So we've had that cleared. We've taken care of that. Gloria Martinez and team, they wrote a grant with the New Mexico DOT, and we brought that to you. We did receive that funding. So once we get some capital money and sit down and work with that and get that funding from DOT, we'll be working on that parking lot for them. So we're super excited about that. And then my last part was Las Cruces High School. So we had talked about that one section, E and F, that needed a roof. So we will be, they've actually started. So we've got fencing up, we've got the security piece taken care of, got everything out of there, and they've begun work. So the estimated completion is December 2018, but we work closely, our teams have worked closely with the principal, and they have plenty of room in their new facility, and we were there the other day for our principal's meeting, and it looks amazing, but a little inconvenient, but everything else is looking good over there. So that's our update with that one. And then finally under this, we're beginning our 5-year facility master plan. So this is something that's required by law and also is required for matching funds with the Public School Facilities Authority, to receive matching funds. And so we'll begin that. We have begun that. A letter's going out to principals this week letting them know we'll have our ARC. We sent an RFP, and ARC was the one that received the bid for that. So they'll be working with our district this fall to get that in place. And that's just a great tool that'll help us navigate through our 5-year facility plan. So as soon as, in the middle of that, we'll absolutely involve you in that process, but also as we get that, share that with you. That will hopefully guide us into our next bond project. So with that, I stand for questions on my first agenda item.
President Frank?
Yes.
I just have a quick question. Mr. Hawkins, did we find out on the vandalism who did that?
So, Mr. President, Ms. Dahlman, so we do have camera footage of that, which was turned over to the police. So they are working on that, and I don't know if they've identified that yet. As of Friday, they were interested, Crime Stoppers was interested in getting involved and actually offering a reward. So I have not heard an update, but I will follow up and get that. I'll email that out to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good question. Any more questions? Yes, Mr. Castro.
Yes, do we have any insurance coverage for those such losses on vandalism?
So, Mr. President, Mr. Castro, so in most instances, our insurance deductible is $25,000. So we're kind of navigating through right now. So we estimate the damage in parts and labor to be right around $25,000. Here's where it gets interesting is that we had those units. So if we had to replace each of those units the 13 units that we had set aside that we were saving for a rainy day, it would have been extremely costly. I mean, probably $5,000 to $10,000 per unit we would be looking at. So we saved some money there, but I'm not sure. We'll work with our insurance company to see, because it's still damage to each one of those 13 units. So with that $25,000 deductible, absolutely anything over that we'll submit for that. So great question.
And we do want to assure the board and the public, we're working with our own public safety department as well as the Las Cruces Police. We will prosecute anyone who steals from a school building. So we're working as diligently as we can, and we do have cameras in all facilities, and we do keep that footage live for us to see. So.
Okay, thank you.
Ready, Mr. President. Oh, yes, sir.
No, to the next item.
All righty, Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent. My next item is PSCOC capital funding for standard system and security projects. This is one of the applications that we submitted. Ms. Gloria Martinez and team of one has worked diligently on, and we worked with the states. So we have the ability to receive matching funds for our capital projects depending on their ranking. And I know we've talked a lot in here when we brought rankings. We've kind of had that discussion. So this year, the state put out two separate. They put out the capital. It's the capital money systems, and then they put out also a separate safety component to that. So if you recall from the legislature, they set aside $40 million over, I believe, 4 or 5 years. That was added for safety projects in there. So if you look in your packets, we have these two applications that Gloria has put together. So let me tell you the hard work that goes into this. It's a preliminary application that we do, then it's an intense application. And this year, the application project has really changed up. I was talking to Ms. Martinez, and I believe it's something like 20 to 30 pages for each one of these projects for each site. Documentation, it's pretty intense. And then we'll have PSFA here on August 23rd and 24th doing site visits. They were here earlier in the summer doing the school visits for systems. So we visited Desert Hills, Camino. Actually, it was the first page that you have. We visited all of those projects. And then I believe that information, or those projects we'll know about those projects here shortly. I want to say September is what they had told us. And then if you look at the second page, those are all the security projects that we've put in for. Some of them are duplicate, and in meeting with the state, they said, go ahead and do that. So if you don't receive it in the systems piece, you'll also be eligible to receive it in the security piece and vice versa. So we went ahead and, again, a lot of work has gone into that. They'll be visiting us 23rd and 24th of August to look at the school sites, look at those projects, and then prioritize those. Something that's really important that I want to share with you again is that so if we do qualify for matching funds, it's a huge impact to the district. So we basically pay a third, and the state pays 2/3 of that. So over the next 5 years, if you recall through the legislature, that formula is going to change. So over the next 5 years, it's going to totally flip, and it's going to be incremental over the next 5 years. So at the end of the 5th year, it will be a swap. The district will pay 66%, and we will be paying. We will be paying 66%, and the district will be paying, the state, will be paying the 33%. I'll get it out here in a second. But so we're really, we're always going to have needs, but Gloria and team has worked really hard in getting that in. So if you look at the totals down there, there's a lot of money that can be saved through these projects. So they've worked really hard on that, and hopefully we'll hear shortly and be able to report out in September and October about the great news of receiving some matching funds. So, yes, ma'am. With that, I stand for questions.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Or President Frank, Mr. Hawkes, do we know why they're doing that? Is it because they're giving us too much money, or what?
Mr. Frank,
They're mean.
Madam Vice President, so one of the discussion points in that is that, so when you look at, so we have a bonding capacity, some of the bigger districts and some of the smaller districts, I'll use kind of back home, like Reserve and some of these other places. So it's kind of the bonding capacity, so it's kind of shifting some of that money. There's different schools of thought of why, and through that discussion point, so helping those school districts that don't have the bonding capacity, I'm going to just tell you, it was kind of frustrating for us because even though we have bonding capacity, we have 41 school sites, that to maintain that and to upkeep that and to keep going takes a lot of money. So I don't have an answer. I have an opinion on that, I think. So, but yeah, that was kind of what was shared with us, is they're kind of shifting that. And of course, the other one of the other reasons that they've given us is that the money's drying up again and it's shrinking. And so they're trying to figure out how to divvy that up. I'm sorry I don't know if that answered your question. Any more questions?
I think we've run out of questions.
Awesome. Sounds good. Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent, the next item is a construction projects update. This is just an update. And so with that, myself or Ms. Gloria would stand for any questions you may have.
Las Cruces High School. Is everything done?
So, Mr. President, so again, wings E and F, I think we talked about this, but just kind of as a quick reminder. So as we were going through the project, the contractors, so they run into some roofing issues, some decking issues, and roofing is kind of interesting. So if you're doing brand new work, it's pretty easy because you're going to build a roof. But as you're doing remodel work, when once you start getting into that, you start to find problems like in any remodel. And we always kind of have some set aside for that, and there's a certain percentage, but when they got into that piece, it was pretty crazy. So it was decided that we needed to go ahead and redo those wings E and F. And so that's the only project. So everything else is completed. We've begun that last phase, and that's the last project that we're going to finish up. And that is running from August. Actually, I believe we started in late July, and that'll run through December of 2018, and then Las Cruces High will be fully finished.
will we have students in those particular wings during that time?
So I don't believe so. So we've blocked that off. We've pulled everything out of there. The principal, we worked with the school. We went in there and helped them out, got all their stuff out. So depending on, I was just talking to Miss Martinez. So they're going to try to work in sections. So if we can safely start to complete sections and turn those over, we always try to do that because that provides that space. Fortunately, that we have plenty of space at Las Cruces High School, even though we've grown. We've gone from our 2,600 student population down to 1,700-ish. So we're good with space, and hopefully we get into those spaces sooner than that. But it just depends on safety and how well we can do. Roofing is tough because walls are easier. You finish up, you seal it up, but with that roof part of it, you got to make sure if you can work in sections, you got to make sure you do it
I
safely
remember
for kids.
now about the roof. It slipped my mind.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Jaramillo.
I have a quick question. Mr. Hawkins, when is this project going to be done up front, up in this building here? And like, can you explain like what, obviously you can see where the people are going to be, where there's going to be a window or that sort of stuff, or what is on the other side of it? What is this project?
The
that's in
secret
this-
wall over there. That's the
Yeah, it seems like, I'm like, what is it for?
Mr. President, Mr. Jaramillo. So the expected completion of this building is the second week in September. So what this is we'll have a barrier right here. So first of all, we've redone this closet. If you see the walls come out a little bit here. So we're moving we're putting in some cases on the other side to display artwork and some different things because we're shifting up the front a little bit. So we'll have a safety wall right here with a receptionist bubble with our security. And then we'll have security doors that'll come in. So people will have access here coming into the building, but then to get further, they'll have to either be buzzed in or use their swipe card to get in there. Yes, sir.
Yes, Senora.
I'm just thinking about the bathrooms. How will they access the bathrooms?
So, Mr. President, Senora Flores, so they'll have access. They can come in. We'll also have another layer after that. So we'll have some security doors on the next two hallways. So like, for instance, during a board meeting, we'll be able to have these doors open, but there'll be that other layer so people won't be able to pass that, but have access to the bathroom.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, so, Mr. Deputy Superintendent, could you check, I think we talked about this, when we were at Las Cruces High in the spring, and it was a windy day, it was a Sunday for the football presentation. There's multiple areas where there's just sand in what could be nice flower beds or grass. But since we're in the desert, could we at least put some rocks in there? Something bigger so that the sand's not blowing. It's done? Oh, thank you.
Done.
All right. Thank you so much.
That was easy.
If only your day were like that all day long. You can't
That
keep
was
Gloria
quick.
beside you
Anything
all
we
day
can do. Any more questions?
Looks like there are no more questions.
Alrighty. So my next item, Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent, this is actually an action item, and we are asking for your approval of the bus contract between Las Cruces Public School District and STS New Mexico for the 2018-19 school year. You have the contract with you, but I wanted to highlight a few things. And first of all, just send a thanks out to Ed Ellison, Will Manning and his purchasing crew, and of course, Sean Barham and Todd Gregory for working with the bus company. So we have I've got to tell you, we've got a great relationship with them, and as we've gone through some tough times, they've been really good. Last year, we didn't show an increase outside of ancillary services, and they knew we were going through some tough budget times, but we did have some discussions, and if we looked at the trends nationwide, so most contracts with transportation companies, and even if you even districts that have their own companies, you're going to see at least a 2 to 4% increase every year. Due to maintenance, due to some different things, cost of fuel. A lot of contracts have a built-in kind of a standard 4% every year, and they've been really good working with us to kind of adjust, and we've gone kind of step by step. We've talked about those standard increases, but those are kind of hard to get into too as well because you don't know what's coming. And so some bus contract talking points. So our increase, it's a $387,500 increase from last year. So $300,000 of that is for maintenance. So to let you know, our buses went into service. It's kind of interesting. So when you set up a bus fleet, you would want your buses broke up. So we're on a 12-year cycle for buses in New Mexico. So you would want a 12th of your buses turned over every year and replaced. So with what went down, we actually, this STS purchased 12 with the state, purchased and leased 12, all of our buses the first month in 2010. So all of our buses are the same age. So when we get to the end point, which I believe we have 4 years left on that 12, they're going to have to purchase 100, I believe, in 24 or 121 buses. We're trying to work with the state on getting a rotation cycle and figure that out, because what that does to you is maintenance. So we're getting into this 9th year of these buses, and it's interesting, kind of like a vehicle. When the engines and the buses that we purchased, we're having some issues with them. They were a new engine and some new things that have come with it. So they've shared a lot of their maintenance costs. They've showed us kind of some of these things. I know I was just talking to the owner the other day, and they had to replace. We're thinking there's about 5 buses right now here in the next month or two that are going to need new engines. $35,000 for a new engine. That's just for the engine, and they're only able to get 2-year warranties because we have that 5 years, I believe, left. So they're trying to get that 5-year warranty to get us through the end. 2-year warranties, can't buy more. I mean, it's been actually very interesting. So they've been really honest. So that's kind of that piece there. There's an $87,500 anticipated fuel increase, which we feel is very reasonable. We've talked about, they offered us, they said, do you want to go just with like a standard kind of, 2%? And that's kind of rolling the dice with the market. So we've talked about that, and we feel good about the contract this year. And again, we're working some different things. Ancillary field trip increased 2%, and then they were really awesome. K3 Plus, they held it steady at last year's rate for us, just because we had worked the budget already, and they were amazing in working with that. Something that we're trying out as a kind of maybe a cost-saving measure is we've created a satellite yard at Oñate. So our East Mesa buses are held out there, so that really cuts down on wasted fuel and having to come back to 17th Street. Mileage, I know there was some issues with that they're working through with some of their drivers because that changes up some of their times, but that's one of the suggestions. So we're looking at possibly some options of satellite yards throughout the city because, of course, the fuel cost, tire cost, I mean, all the maintenance piece of that. So with that, so the total amount of the contract is $5,718,807.08. So with that, I stand for questions.
No question.
I have a question. Is it possible to approach the legislature on the possibility of maybe, I know they're trying to extend the life of a bus, but in our case, since they're all the same age, could we maybe hedge it a little bit and do some change earlier?
So, Mr. Frank Senora Flores, absolutely. So we've been talking with our lobbyists, and we've had those discussions last year. So that was one thing that really worried us is if we go to that 15.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing our maintenance costs they've just gone through the roof. So we were trying to kind of hedge that and kind of get ahead of that curve. The other piece is the bus company is absolutely willing to step up with us and meet with legislature.
Right.
They have the knowledge, and they actually are a national company, so they have statistics, they have data, they have information and access. So they said they're 100% with us. They're willing to sit down with our lobbyists, but also legislators and talk about that. Couple of other things. So air conditioning is absolutely one of the things that we want to discuss, but there was some new federal regs as far as, and I think we brought it to you, we mentioned it, seatbelts now, which changes our capacity on buses because it becomes a 2 harness seat versus some of our buses we can seat 3. We're kind of gauging that to see how that's going to play out, and we think it's going to be kind of as you purchase new buses, you'll be required to do that. But if it's safe for kids, we want to have that discussion ahead of time as well. So They're absolutely 100% willing. So we're going to connect them with our lobbyists and some legislatures so we can have that discussion.
And if you need any support from the board, let us know.
Absolutely. We'll keep you informed with that and absolutely appreciate that support.
Well, I just have one more comment.
Yes.
President Frank, Mr. Hawkins. So if they're looking to extend the life of keeping the buses to up to, 15 years, you said?
Ma'am.
But they're going to include AC in the buses. That's going to compound even more on maintenance because, as we all know, AC uses up a lot of the engine capacity, right? Or
Absolutely.
So,
Mr. Frank, Ms. Dahlman, absolutely. And one of the things we're really worried about that because, I mean, if you look at a vehicle, I mean, even just a you know, vehicle that we drive, you know, you're good usually. I mean, that's why they're offering these great warranties now because cars are usually pretty good. You know, the first 5 years. After that, everything, once you start, I mean, I always say once you have to buy a set of tires, it seems like things start happening after that. And we're talking about, I mean, even a standard vehicle, it's kind of like a bus. The bus is solid, but the moving parts are different. And you get into that and the maintenance costs on top of that. And that was one of the concerns when we talked about retrofitting that creates a whole nother ball of wax because you're retrofitting an air conditioner on an old engine that's already struggling.
Right.
So yes,
So
ma'am.
that doesn't make sense to extend up to 15 years.
No.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
So should we go ahead with the vote?
I would appreciate that, sir. So we were asking for the approval of the bus contract between LCPS and STS New Mexico for 18-19 school year.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the bus contracts between the Las Cruces Public Schools and the STS New Mexico for the 2018-2019 school year.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it has moved and been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No opposition. This passes 100%.
Awesome.
So we can now transport our kids to school next week.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Mr. Superintendent, my last item is just is the list of bond oversight committee members that we had talked about last year before, and thank you for all your input and information. So I will report back to you, and thank you for we had misplaced a couple of those names, so thank you for getting those to us. So the plan is this. So we've put in these applications just because we had deadlines that came, and so if we get approved for these projects, we kind of have a little flexibility kind of on start times and how we do that. So we're just getting ahead of the game. So our goal is by once we get school started in August, we'll be reaching out over the next 2 weeks to these folks, talking to them, and then we'll be having those meetings. Money will be available in October, as we heard, or late October, early November. So we will have those discussions immediately, and then we will come to you and report back and as to how that's going. We're super excited to have input, and we'll have members of our team as well as community members. And Dr. Young, we still need to get our student that we had talked about.
So, Mr. Greenberg, I'm going to look. What we decided was to ask the Student Advisory Council to give me a name of a student, and then to have conversations of if they want that to be a senior, or maybe they want to look at a 10th grader or 11th grader who would have some consistency there. We'll leave that up to them for discussion. And then that student will join the 2 adults each of you have given us names for the committee.
So with that, I stand for questions.
There doesn't appear to be any questions. Thank you. You had a very long report tonight, but
So now it's evening, so please have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
our next presentation is going to be Dr. Lozano, speaking about social, emotional, mental health update.
This is for you, Sarah.
Good afternoon again, Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent. I want to invite a couple of people, actually about 5 or 4 people that I invited to present with me this evening. So with you tonight, we have a few guests, like I said. We have Ms. Sonia Saiz, who's our mental health coordinator. I think Sonia has spoken to you in the past. Emil Hammelwright, who is our Employee Assistance Program Coordinator, but actually she's also going to be assisting us with a lot of our support efforts that we have for our students related to mental health. And I also want to thank Mr. Eddie Reina, who is our social worker at Early College. For the record, he is off contract and is here on his time. So thank you, Eddie. I know you got here even before the meeting started, so thank you. We really do appreciate it.
We owe you some comp time, so.
Yes.
Dr. Sanchez, will you go over there and work on that with him? Dr. Sanchez will take care of you.
Mr. President, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent, we're here this evening to provide you with an update related to some of the initiatives and kind of provide you with an overview of where we're headed for this next school year on supporting our schools and our students with the mental health needs that they have. As you know, there's a lot of needs in our schools. One of the things that we recognize as a district is the needs that our students carry with them related to their mental health conditions. So we are really prioritizing this. Dr. Ewing has made this a priority for our district. It's also aligned to your goal of student success. And so just want to go through some of the things that we're working on this year. Like I said, it is a district priority.
Dr. Askin, we didn't get Dr.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Ewing. So Dr. Amanda Lopez Askin is here with us also. She's going to be doing a short section of the presentation. Amanda is a personal friend of mine. We actually got our doctoral degree together, so yeah, I know her very well. So thank you. That's why maybe I just forgot you. Thank you, Amanda. I apologize. And thank you for Amanda to taking the time for being here. You're welcome. Yeah. Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Ewing. So like I said, it is a district priority for us. Restorative practices. Last year, we provided you with the update on restorative practices once a month. Mr. Frank and Mr. Jaramillo attended, I think, probably every task force meeting that there was. I wasn't as present at everyone as I wish I was, but they did some really good work and really laying the foundation of where we're at today. I'm happy to report that we are continuing our partnership with a gentleman from Dallas, who I think Senora Flores and Ms. Dahlman, I believe you were there too at the retreat when he did a presentation. I don't know if you were there, but I do know Senora Flores was there. Anyhow, we've gotten some really positive feedback on his presentations, and very good presenter, but also the message that he's delivering to our teachers is something that I know all of you are in agreement with, and that we are really excited about our efforts regarding the approach that we want to take with restorative practices. So I included this because I think it's very connected to the work that we're doing. Those of you that were at our suicide conversation meeting last week, Dr. Rao, who's been very we're so grateful for the services she's provided. She's presented at a couple of meetings, and she really brought up how restorative practices is really connected to our work in really bringing awareness and prevention to suicide in our community. Like I said, we do have a plan on continuing the support for schools. At this point, tomorrow morning, actually, I want to extend an invitation to you. Tomorrow morning, Mr. Oliver will be speaking to a group of schools at Oñate at the PAC. There's one session at 9:30 for elementary schools, and then another session at 1 p.m. for secondary schools. So what we did is, since tomorrow is the first day of teachers being back, what we're doing is we're live streaming his presentation. So if schools don't want to drive all the way to Oñate, they could project it, and they could be there live as he's presenting to our teachers. So we're really excited about that. Another thing that we're going to be doing this year is really focusing on informing our community. So I think there's been a lot of conversation here within central office with our school administrators, but also we want to make sure that our community is aware of what restorative practices is, why there's the need, and what it means. Because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what restorative practices is. One being that it's just about not suspending kids, which we all know that that's not the case. It's more than that. It's really the approach that we take to a situation, and really it comes down to building relationships. So like I said, that's going to be one of our efforts, is to, whether it's through town hall meetings or whether it's through going to different events at schools, but really just informing our community of what it is. The last thing we want is for community members to think that LCPS no longer is doing anything to kids and they're doing whatever they want at schools, because that's absolutely not the case. With that said, I want to invite Sonia to speak a little about a grant that we recently applied for through the Public Education Department. It's a Title IV grant through ESSA. Dr. Arteaga was instrumental in really formulating the grant. We were allocated $568,000 for our district, and so this grant has, you know what, I'm going to let her talk now because she's going to go over the grant. So yes, so with that said, here's Sonia. Talk a lot.
Mr. President, board members, Mr. Superintendent, thank you for allowing us to speak to all the work that we've been working towards and preparing for the coming school year. Yes, the ESSA Title IV Part A includes a block grant, which is known as the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant. It contains 3 goals. The first being providing students with well-rounded education, and then the second being the one that's on your screen, safe and healthy students, school conditions for students learning to create a healthy and safe school environment, and then goal 3, supporting effective use of technology. For the purpose for this evening and going over mental health, I'm just going to focus on goal number 2. But as you can see, we have social emotional district specialists that I'm going to speak more to when we come to in a couple of slides around social emotional learning. But we actually have interviews set for this position at the beginning of next week. We also have brought on a high school truancy coach, which is to extend the services provided by our attendance officers right now. You might be aware that they really focus on elementary schools, and so this will really help in the secondary schools, specifically high schools. Funding to continue supporting restorative practices implementation, as Dr. Lozano just spoke to, and then prevention and awareness programs for bullying and suicide, which we are about to discuss further on the next slide. One thing that's not up here that I didn't want to mention that I think is actually a huge celebration is that because of the monies that we've applied for with this grant, I think we were able to then put, and I don't know all about the budget yet, I'm learning, or I just had my class this summer. I think we were able to free up some other monies, which put a full-time counselor at Central Elementary and Booker T. Washington Elementary, who previously had been sharing a counselor. So that is huge, and they are extremely grateful that they get those full-time positions this year. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the move to Ms. Hemmelwright, and then I'll come back and speak with you all in just a bit.
Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the board, as Amy's coming forward, we're kind of working in tandem. Dr. Sanchez is working with some of the truancy officers, and then Mr. Hindy's in the back. And we've got him working on that project as well, utilizing his high school experience. So as you see this division in front of you, you see Dr. Sanchez and his instruction team there side by side. So it's an excellent example of folks working together for the benefit of students and staff. So thank you so much.
Okay. Good evening, and I'm excited but also sad to be here to talk to you about this series of guided conversations that we're having on the topic of should we talk about suicide, which of course is, as I always say, a rhetorical question. We need to talk about suicide. I'm excited that we've got the conversations rolling and we've had excellent attendance. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the conversations. And of course, it's obvious and evident why it makes me sad that we need to be having these conversations. We continue to lose students and community members to suicide in Las Cruces. So in response to a need expressed by some of our students in the spring and also expressed by some of the surviving family members of students that we lost, we decided over the summer that we had an urgent need to do something to give people a venue, bring them together, and offer support. So what we devised is a series of what I would call front porch meetings or guided conversations. And I want to say, Dr. Ewing, that this morning at the new employee orientation, you introduced your executive cabinet and you said to our new staff, these people are here to support you. And I was very moved because there was not a person up there who hasn't directly supported me in this work, and it's hard work. It's hard work. So, 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm talking to these people and they're answering my calls. And so I appreciate you guys. Dr. Wendy, on a Sunday, a student came up to me in the grocery store upset, and I wasn't sure how to answer, so I'm texting Dr. Wendy and she's answering. And for 10 years, Dr. Sanchez has never not returned an email within 24 hours. I don't know how he does it. I'm pretty sure he doesn't sleep. So everybody... He does it, just for So in attendance, so we've had two guided conversations. In total, we've had about 80 attendees, which we were very happy with because we planned this pretty quickly, and it was over the summer when students aren't in school. I want to thank Ms. Dahlman and Senora Flores for supporting us and attending. It really speaks to the community about how serious we take this, along with all of, I mean, just about everybody you see sitting along the back wall was there. I mean, thank you so much for your support and being there. We had, in addition to our staff, we had teachers, students, we had LCPS police, we had parents, we had community mental health providers, other community members in attendance. And in post-conversation, I send out a survey to all of the attendees, and much of the feedback that I've received is, I want to stay involved. Please keep me involved. Please keep having the conversations. So going forward, we want to form a task force to plan and pave the direction that going forward for suicide prevention and awareness and response. And so part of the unexpected outcome of these meetings is that we're building alliance with lots of community members, and it's given people, and this is from them, this is the feedback I've gotten from them, they call it a platform. It's given all these people that care so much and want to be involved a platform to come together with us and get involved. So that was an unexpected and very positive outcome. Just a bit more about that. Survey results, based on the surveys I sent out, people have said that just simply having a place to come together and talk about this is helpful. They've said that hearing the experiences of others has been helpful. So we briefly talked about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, at our first front porch meeting, and I got a tremendous amount of feedback saying we want to understand ACEs better. We want to know more about ACEs. So at our second meeting, we went more in depth into adverse childhood experiences, and I got a lot of response from folks saying that was helpful. It's so helpful to understand that. And that's at the foundation of restorative practices. So of course, this all ties together. So students let me know. We had students in attendance at both meetings. Students have let me know both times that they really want an opportunity to come together as students and have student-led conversations about these topics. My own daughter attended the first meeting, and she told me afterwards as we were driving home, she said, Mom, and she's starting high school this year, and she said, Mom, before, if somebody talked about this, one of my friends, I avoided it because I was afraid I would say something wrong that would make it worse. Now I know what to say. And that was a direct result of Sonia taking the students that were in attendance and pulling them aside and having kind of a secondary student-led meeting. So we know the students are telling us they want more of that. We're going to provide that to them. So we'll continue to host events for the whole community. We'll be sure to, under Sonia's kind of leadership, we're going to start student-led groups. One last bit of data. So in our post-survey, I asked attendees how comfortable they were on a scale of 1 to 5 discussing suicide pre-conversation and then post-conversation. So on average, the attendees responded at a 3.1. So 3.1 before the conversation on a scale of 1 to 5 is how comfortable they were talking about suicide. Post-conversation, it's 4.7. So on a scale of 1 to 5, they're reporting that the average is 4.7. And I even find that true for myself. Even at the new employee orientation today, part of my presentation was, I'm here for you as staff members if you feel suicidal. And it was much easier for me to say that. It's a hard word to say. You want to avoid it. It was much easier for me even to say that as a result of these conversations. So are there any questions about those? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for everything you do.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, I'm going to go ahead and cover the last 2 bullet points on this slide. The expansion of our suicide awareness curriculum, which is curriculum that is going to be purchased and was included in the grant, will be the More Than Sad. And currently our some of our schools throughout our district utilize the SOS, Signs of Suicide. I believe Mr. Reyna had spoke to how Early College High utilizes that curriculum, and that was actually initiated by Julie Kirkis, the health social worker, but with the support of Dr. Wendy, who purchased those curriculums. So we're just updating and making sure that each school has their kit at both the high school and middle school level. And then we're adding the More Than Sad, which is a curriculum that was brought to us by Officer Barella, the parent who reached out to Amy originally to have a start conversations. He really wanted to be a part, and those of you who have had an opportunity to be in a room with him when he speaks to suicide and suicidality, it's so powerful. So I really see him at this point as a growing expert in this area. So we both watched the curriculum and feel that it's an appropriate curriculum to, and they're both evidence-based, to bring to our grades that have already had the signs of suicide. So currently that's one of the major projects I'm working on with Dr. Lozano to see how, and our lead, I was able to bring on with the encouragement and help of Ms. Glenda Rodriguez to bring on lead social workers and counselors to help with planning and disseminating out the work, because it'll be big. So that's the extended suicide curriculum. Bullying and harassment prevention, since I came into the school system in 2001, we've had different programs. And in my work this year with our mental health providers, really trying to gather qualitative data around what they're utilizing, and a number of them are just extremely resourceful. They're creating their own curriculums based off of different programs. For example, character counts, so they will take that information, but they are creating their own programs and are purchasing them. So in working with the collaboration against bullying, and I go over here because Dr. Askins is a part of that coalition as well, is really trying to identify the work around bullying and harassment prevention and awareness, knowing that we have it being addressed at classroom levels and school-wide. I think in my mind, in trying to figure out our movement in this specific area, would be to really start being more database driven. And so what that could look like is working with Ms. Mullins on how to be more efficient with documentation and synergy. Dr. Wendy allowed me some time with her to look at a data tracking system. But really, if you look at the research, the only way to inform our practice with evidence-based programs, the way they work, is by actually knowing what the need is. And I would dare to say, just given the the anecdotal data that I've collected at this point, that the needs are different at each one of our school levels, or each one of our school sites and the academic levels, so elementary, middle school, high school. So also working with the CAB, understanding and realizing that a huge piece or an area maybe to focus in on would be just understanding the differences between bullying and peer conflict. Because at this point, I think we've really we're saturated with the word bullying, and not to, please don't misunderstand that I'm not saying that anytime a student comes, even with peer conflict, that there isn't hurt that is involved, but knowing how to address it and how we run our protocols that as far as like what we're legally bound to do can look very differently when we have issues of peer conflict versus bullying. So yes, that's where we're moving in that area. Before I move slides, do you all have any questions? Yes, Senora Flores.
Senora.
Yes, you mentioned a task force here. Has that been put together yet?
Yeah, you know what, we missed that one. Yes.
Okay.
Senora Flores, thank you for asking. So we're in the process of forming a task force, and we hope to have we hope that any of you that are interested will be involved, and you'll certainly be invited.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it's still forming.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. President, members of the board, Senora Flores, if I may also add to about the task force. So there's currently a community task force right now that I think they've been gathering for quite a bit of time, and we've always had representation in that task force. But we also recognize that there are, we want to be specific to our schools, to the needs of our schools. So how, as a school system, how can we support the efforts of bringing awareness to suicide? So that's really going to be the focus of that task force, and we'll make sure to include. And Dr. Sanchez actually was also going to be working on that with us in formulating this task force. And I think Gabe, last year we started the conversation on bringing in different community members, experts. There's a lot of people that are very passionate about bringing this to the forefront. So as soon as we get more information, we'll make sure to send it out to all the board members.
Yeah,
Okay.
Senora.
Question. I think I have a second question. You talk about the curriculum. What is it? SAD and signs of suicide. Does it go down to elementary, or is it just middle school and high school?
That's a great question. So the focus, the content, as far as the cognitive ability is really more focused on secondary age schooling.
Not even middle.
Middle, yes. Middle and high will both receive these curriculums.
Okay.
And so the work that I will be doing with the leads, counselors and social workers, is how to roll that out, what that looks like, to help support every counselor, social worker in our schools to be able to know, just help with the coordination of that. So that's a big project.
Okay, and then the counselors at schools, like, okay, there isn't a specific elementary curriculum, although the age of suicide has been going down.
It has.
I think 10 or 11 is the youngest, maybe 9, I'm not sure. But are we identifying the counselors on each campus that will specialize in case there is a need?
So that is a relevant question.
Okay.
And
a great idea.
And a
so
great
we really want
idea.
you on our task
Yes.
force.
Okay.
Yes.
So maybe one of the things we could do is, as you're working with elementary counselors, let's just embed in the training for all of them these warning signs.
Yes.
And then let's go ahead and see if we, Dr. Wendy, if you have any money, if we can order some. Well, you're easier to get money from than Ed, so if we could order some of those extra kits so that the counselors would have access to that information at the elementary schools. Because I think what you hear the board saying is, even though we know that the materials created are secondary, and we call secondary 6 through 12, but the board is really concerned that what are we doing in elementary as well?
Right.
So while we roll out the program, let's just include our elementary counselors, and then, Eddie, if we can impose on some of your time, and Ed will work out an arrangement for you on whatever we need to do, but if you could work to train some of them with Sonia and with Amy, I think it would be most helpful.
So, and through the task force, these are the conversations that we will be having. And in addition to that, all counselors, regardless of grade level, will receive the same training around signs of suicide and More Than Sad have an adult training piece that is actually in the plan for them to receive as well. And when I go to the next slide, I want to try and help make the connection of what the focus of elementary will be as far as social emotional health goes overall.
President?
Yes, Mr. Jaramillo.
Senora Flores, with your permission, I guess, could we set up, once I get this committee set up, couldn't we make sure that we have somebody on that, and just like we have other people on different committees.
Right,
Can we make sure that
I think at least 2 of us can be on.
and add that on to one of our committees?
Regardless that we assign board members.
We assign a board
Sure.
member, or two board
Sure.
members to join that committee. I think that would make sure that we're represented there, and then obviously we can switch that when we do switch our other stuff
Right,
too, so.
right.
Yes, that's much appreciated. I remember being on the task force with both you, Mr. Jaramillo, and President Frank for the restorative practices, and it's always helpful to have your perspective in the room.
Yeah,
So
I would
thank
love
you.
to do that,
Mhm. So what you, I'm sorry.
One more question.
Yes, of course.
Oh, let me look and see.
I can come back.
Okay, and you can, it's not so much that, it's just I'm thinking of the staff at school-based health centers.
Yes.
Are we including them in all these conversations?
That is a great question. I know that the invitations are going out. So for example, both Mayfield and Las Cruces High, their entire community received the invitation
Okay.
that I'm aware of, but we can make pointed direct contact with them in the upcoming and also to include them in our trainings as we move forward because that,
They can also help train.
yes, definitely.
Vice
Yes.
versa, you know,
Yes.
back and forth. Because last year or last school year, I heard a report, I think Amanda, you were there at the teen pregnancy prevention work group, where a school-based health center staff told us how she was working with the teacher
Yes.
and serving the needs of the students, and it was our immigrant community that
It
she was
was.
serving. So it was critical what she was doing.
Yes.
And so that's why they need to be included in all of this as well, even though they are not necessarily our employees. They work for La
Yes.
Clinica and.
They provide such a relevant service,
Right.
yes.
Go ahead.
President
Ms.
Frank, well, at the last meeting that we attended,
Yeah,
Senora
that's right.
Flores and I, there was a gentleman sitting next to me that's an RN at Cruces, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his last name or his first name either. But he mentioned that he wants to get the Ben Archer staff involved in this as well, so.
That's wonderful. He's actually located in their facility with
Right.
them. Yes.
Yes.
So they work very well as a group.
So I think that
At
would
least
be a
that's what I
great-
remember. Yes,
great
definitely.
idea.
And just to plant a seed, I really, Amanda and I are already working on a number of things, but we need those health centers at the middle schools.
Exactly.
Yes,
Definitely.
just planting a seed, okay?
The seed's already there.
Yes, oh, good. I just watered, okay. So moving to the next.
Mr. Ellison, we need some water.
Yes, water.
Before you proceed, Mr. Castro would like to.
I just had one.
Yes, of course.
Mr. President, I know that it's a problem that's increasing nationwide, but what is the scope of the problem within our district? It's suicides, and what can you grab the scope of the problem?
So part of, I think, and this is my opinion, I have read some recent data around it, but I don't have it to quote. There's a huge stigma around suicide. I think I've read that it's cultural. I believe it's cultural on a lot of levels. And so from what I'm aware of, we do not have accurate data around the scope of the problem. Nationwide, we have some statistics that I know it's one in, I'm gonna turn to Amy because she's a little more versed.
So quantitatively, New Mexico ranks among the highest in rate of both suicide attempt and completion. So it's it's abysmal in our community. Yeah.
Any further questions on this slide? Okay. Social and emotional supports for schools. As I mentioned earlier, we are hiring a social emotional support specialist. Social and emotional learning is a process by which students acquire and effectively apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand, manage emotions, set and achieve goals, feel and show empathy, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. This is the definition provided by CASEL, which is one of the leading entities in social emotional learning. They're the collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning. And so basically, what the intention for this individual is to be in our schools in a coaching capacity to really support our teachers in social emotional lessons. We have this and have had it throughout our district. I know Mr. Reyna, his presentation really touched on social emotional learning. It's what counselors and social workers are all versed in schools, but this is a very specific type of curriculum, or a specific type of program that can look like different curriculums. The curriculums that I am most versed with personally are emotional intelligence. A couple of the bigger names is 6 Seconds and Ruler that has been put out by the Yale Institute for Emotional Learning, Emotional Intelligence. And so part of what this individual and I and others, the intention is to invite Mr. Reyna and Ms. Hemmelwright to work with us on identifying the best curriculum that is that works in tandem with restorative practices. Because if you look at the foundation of restorative practices and the 3 main things that Mr. Oliver recommended for us to focus on in this coming year, which are circles, respect agreements, and the language that we use, those all directly connect with managing emotion, empathy, building empathy, setting and achieving goals, and building and maintaining healthy relationships. That can all happen through the circles, respect agreements, and the way that we adjust our language to be very effective and be mindful of feeling around the situations that students find themselves in that then wind up resulting in harm across the board. So that is the intention with our social emotional learning specialist and how it aligns to restorative practices. I'm also working with Dr. Amy McConnell Franklin. She is within our state. She is one of the known not just providers, but this is her expertise. She's out of Taos, New Mexico, and worked very diligently with Taos schools, and now is a consultant for America Schools, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but she travels to different countries to support and help them grow their emotional intelligence curriculums within their schools. And the data, which I can provide you with at a later time because I don't have that on me, but it really does show to support not just social emotional well-being, but also academic well-being, because it's really about addressing the needs of the holistic, of the whole child. Okay. Any questions on this slide? Oh, yes, Mr. Reyna had something to, yes, please come. Thank you for reminding me.
Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent, thank you guys for having me here today. I'm beginning to feel at home. Didn't know I'd be here for a second time in such a short period of time. I sent my new boss an email to review the tape for my comp time.
Oh, okay.
So, Miss Gabriela Anise is our new principal over at Arrowhead Park Early College High School, and we are super excited. I am super excited to have her and our new assistant principal down there. And moving forward, I wanted to share a short story. About 5 years ago, I interviewed at a middle school for a position, and I wasn't sure that was really my niche or what I was really wanting to do. And as I was being engaged in the interview, it was real interesting to me that what we know today as restorative practices was a lot of the language that was being used within this interview. And I really gravitated towards that, and it really interested me, because when I've been taught, when you go into an interview, you're not going to interview for them to interview you, you're going into interview for you to interview them to see if it's a good fit for you. Lo and behold, I was hired at Mesa Middle School. My principal then was Mr. Hawkes, and the social worker that was sitting was Sonia Sais on that committee. And I couldn't have been more proud to have worked with such an awesome group of people and their heart and stuff. And so, this restorative practices that was initiated back in the early 70s really hasn't taken off until recently. And so we're beginning to put words and pictures and identifying some things as we move forward. And so, having said that, we continue to move forward in that. Next week, I'll be doing a small training for a PD for our teachers, and I'll be touching on a few things. And I'm going to pull up my phone. I took some notes so I wouldn't forget. And some of those are going to be regarding teaching teachers some of the basic things on recognizing when to report items that are necessary to CYFD. Because a lot of teachers have come to me since I've been over at Arrowhead Park Early College about some things that they really don't know what to do with, and I felt that there was a need there in having that conversation. Managing sensitive conversations regarding suicide and suicide prevention, and these relationships these teachers are building with these kids are very, very meaningful to them, and the trust that's built. And so what do teachers do with it, and how do they proceed and move forward when they're working with kids who are experiencing some pretty intense emotions, and the importance of what those relationships are in moving forward. In addition to that, some of the activities that we will be doing at the school, as far as building community, as we look to the restorative practices, seem real basic and maybe minute, but they're really big in essence. From things as simple as building clubs. At Arrowhead Park, we don't have sports and we don't have the arts, and so clubs is really, really a big ticket there. And we've been approached with from different students to engage in different clubs, and we want to offer those opportunities for them because that builds community. Dances. We have dances, believe it or not, over at Arrowhead Park Early College High School. When some people think of Arrowhead, they think of nerds, and dances don't really jive together. But let me say this.
Can dance.
Yes, right? Anything far from nerds go to Arrowhead Park Early College High School. I'm happy to say that a lot of our population, 50% of our kids, are first generation as far as opportunity to go to college. So that's something that we pride ourselves in there at Arrowhead, and that's a lasting legacy that Miss Amos wanted to leave, and I think she did, in fact, leave that. And some things that I'll be starting are this year are simple as Music Fridays, just putting some music on out in the courtyard and having a sense of community, and then providing some games for kids to be able to engage in and have some tournaments and some prizes and things like that, just to build a sense of community around our school. We have health and wellness classes in our school, and teachers have approached me and I have approached them that when there are certain topics that they'll be touching on, they really want me to be a part of that, so that we can roll out whatever sensitive topics we might be touching on, whether it be STIs, whether it be suicide, whether it be family issues, drug and alcohol, a lot of those issues that kids face. And when you talk about adverse childhood experiences and what leads someone to finally commit suicide, as difficult as that word, it's really hard to identify that one thing. But together, in addressing these issues one at a time, we can hopefully reach out and at least touch some kids. Unfortunately, my son attended a funeral last night, or a vigil, I think it was, of one of his friends who unfortunately had committed suicide at the age of 19. And so he's one of our kids, one of our public school kids. And I asked my son some questions surrounding that, and he even said, "Dad, I do not know he was supposed to have been well-rounded, just a good kid. And so it was a really surprise. And to identify a need as to what that one thing is, it's really difficult. But I think collectively, as we look to restorative practices and we look to teaming together and developing that task force, I think we can bite a big chunk out of this. So with that, any questions?
President Frank, Mr. Reina, I have a question in regards to this gentleman that committed suicide. Had he already graduated?
Yes,
Was he in college?
I believe he was.
So I'm really concerned, and I responded to Ms. Himmelwright's survey, but I'm really concerned about that transition period, that period between graduation and possibly starting college. And sometimes kiddos are not ready to start college. They want a break, and that period of transition is very difficult for them sometimes. And so I know that our state doesn't provide a whole lot of support for those kiddos. And so those are the ones that I'm really concerned about. They can't go to the university to get services, and they can't go to high school anymore. So those are the kids that I'm really concerned about.
You know, I think that I completely agree with you. When you look at transition between 5th grade to 6th grade,
Right.
huge for 6th graders.
Right.
When you look at the transition for 8th graders to 9th graders, huge. And when you look at the transition between high school and college, and if you do not have a close-knit support group, it's easy to get lost in that. And I think the education piece starts back in elementary.
Right. And so sometimes, excuse me for interrupting, but sometimes they're not ready, they're lost, they're totally lost. They have this new sense of freedom that they don't have to go to school, but they don't want to work, and so they feel lost during that time period. And so somehow we need to find a way to address that particular group.
And that might be something that we can definitely look long term. Obviously, I think the issue should be addressed early on. But for those kids that are currently in high school and beginning to move through, having something for them, maybe as a
Safety
transition,
net of
yeah,
some
for
sort.
sure. And senior is awesome, for sure. We'll take that to heart. Yes, ma'am.
Before you go on, could we have a question?
Yes.
Senora.
Yeah, and actually, it's more of a comment. It's something that I keep thinking about every time we do these things on suicide. One of the dangers of young children, and I'm talking about adolescents mostly, is their impulsivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what makes it so dangerous for our young people, because they're quick to act. And I think that one of the things that we need to talk to is safety in the household of weapons. Because if they're easily accessible, it is a very quick way to solve a problem on social media. You broke up with your girlfriend, whatever the situation that drove it. It's impulsivity, and I think that it extends to this gun safety issue. And I don't even have my thank you. I always forget to turn it on. I realize that that's a even more dangerous conversation, but I don't want to leave it out. It's part of the conversation.
And it's absolutely has to be part of the conversation, because we also know that statistically people are more likely to complete suicide when they have access to lethal means. Mm-hmm. We also know that statistically people are more likely to attempt suicide if they've consumed alcohol. Right. So alcohol and drug prevention, that's all part of the conversation.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Board.
Yeah, any more questions? Yes, Mr. Castro.
Mr. President, to what extent do you bring spirituality to the?
I think it's definitely it's a huge component. I think as holistically when you look at a person, and so it is a piece that I address as the individual brings it up. I may even ask throw out the question without bringing too much into it, because I want to make sure it's coming from them versus it being something that I'm imparting on them. But to each individual, it's definitely, I think, a huge part of who they are.
Thank you for asking that question. I've used that in sessions with students, and it's very powerful, and it's really talking about what they have faith in, even if it's their peers, which a lot of the time it is. And I think that that's something that definitely Mr. Reyna and I can work in incorporating in the teacher and counselor, mainly the counselor training, to not be afraid to go. There's been actually a lot of current research in our field of social work around pulling in spirituality, because that is such a powerful way because kids are connecting that way. They just don't understand always that it's that faith that they have in something, and it's not anything more than something that they gravitate and really grounds them. So thank you, Mr. Castro, for asking that.
Yes, Mr. Jaramillo.
Mr. President, I just have one comment real quick, and I just want to say, I think I made a check mark here how many times I said it, and I think every speaker just now said something about relationships, connecting, or something like that. And I just want to say that relationships don't start in kindergarten. Relationships don't start in elementary school. Relationships start way before that. And although we won't be talking directly about suicide or something like that, because it's inappropriate to talk to them about, at a 3-year-old level or 2 or 3 or 4 years old, but relationships start at birth. And so if we can provide quality early childhood education and children are understanding the power of relationships, and being able to answer questions and talk, and talk to people and that sort of stuff, it will indirectly benefit some of these things that are happening in high school. If we wait till high school, it's almost too late. These relationships have stuff, and I know that you guys are talking about, and I just want to take it a step further, is that we need to provide quality relationships at a level where infants and toddlers and preschoolers are doing this. And we're, Las Cruces Public Schools now with our pre-K programs is a step in the right direction. And so I just want to say that I want to make sure that we also focus on young children and having good positive interactions. And you talk about ACEs, that's exactly where we're focusing on adverse childhood experiences. And those things that are happening at 2 infants, 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds are directly related to some of these things that are happening right now. So I wouldn't be doing my service on this desk if I didn't bring in the preschool part of that thing, the quality preschool.
Thank you.
So our last speaker, and now I'm going to present Dr. Lopez Askin. I want to thank Ms. Askin, Dr. Askin, for being here, but she's also been a partner of Las Cruces Public Schools for many years. She is one that we call all the time for advice. She is an expert in suicide on many topics, bullying, etc. So I really want to acknowledge her work with our district and really in our community, because she works, I was talking to her on the phone the other day and she was on her way to Animas, so yeah, that says a lot about the work that she does, so thank you. And Amanda's going to finish off the presentation.
Okay. All right, guys. I am together, I promise. Okay. Thank you all for allowing me to be here today. I appreciate it, Mr. President, members of the school board. My name is Amanda Lopez Askin. I work as the school mental health advocate for the Department of Health in the Southwest region, and that means I travel in the 8 counties of southern New Mexico supporting school staff connected to school mental health. So that sounds relatively vague, but let me tell you, if you look at the Department of Health as an umbrella, the Office of School and Adolescent Health is a program within it. And we focus on suicide prevention, and when I say focus on, there's also funding connected to these. School behavioral health, school-based health centers. So thank you, Senora Flores, for that plug for school-based health centers. We've worked many years together on that endeavor, and I'm very proud to say that I think Las Cruces area is the only school district in the state that has a school-based health center at every high school. So middle school would be more fabulous. So we talk about access to care, things like that. We're winning in that one for sure, as well as youth development, and then we have a focus on school nursing. So the reason I'm here today is specifically to talk about the partnership that we have, Office of School and Adolescent Health / Department of Health, with Las Cruces Public Schools. And I kind of want to give you some historical perspective. So I've been working on this off and on for the last probably 13 years with Las Cruces Public Schools. What happens is that when there is a crisis, right? And so what is a crisis? A crisis event is something that affects the learning in a school, okay? So that can be a death of a employee, that can be a student suicide, it can be a natural disaster. Anything that affects the functioning of learning is something that we consider a crisis, and that is hopefully able to encompass quite a few things. So, having said that, my work has really done a lot in training on how do we respond to a crisis event that mitigates the trauma that young people are dealing with after the fact. So I've been doing that off and on in all of the school districts, including Las Cruces Public Schools, in a way that is very much, oh, do you have time for a training? Oh, great, I'll head that. I'll do that. We'll do that. Oh, you have a lunch hour that I can have? Great. But in not a real systemic way, not in a formalized way. But I'm happy to get the time and happy to have the champions in the school district that I have. And so that's been great, and I appreciate all of that. And then Aztec happened in New Mexico, right? So when you think about school tragedies and you think about things that happen connected, this has happened in our state. And I've said this to Dr. Lozano, I've said this to Sonia quite a bit. I preach this quite often. It is not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. And unfortunately, I hate to say that, but the scale of it we hope that it's very, very small and there's not death involved, but we have to be prepared for when it does happen. And so in this partnership, we are formalizing a way that we're going to train schools in how to respond to a school crisis that, again, mitigates the trauma. I don't want to undersell the mental health aspect of this training, because what we're doing is, it's called postvention. And if you type that word into Microsoft Word, it's going to underline it in blue because it doesn't recognize it, because it's not a form. But we've, in the mental health, school mental health world, we have, we use it quite often. Postvention is how we respond to it, that is including prevention, right? So I'll give you examples of it. After, and I worked with a school district that had a succession of 6 suicides in a very small one, in the span of about 4 months, all young people under the age of 19. So you imagine a very small community dealing with that aftermath. And so then the question is, what do we do? How do we handle this at the school? And so we knew that there were best practices, things like setting up grief rooms, not having certain things that you think that you should because you're a school, as well as being able to identify young people that are at risk after the fact. So, for example, as the largest, one of the biggest concerns we have for a young person connected to concern about their well-being is if they've had a previous suicide attempts. School often know those young people. So then after a major large-scale event, we're concerned about those kids. And this is what the Prepare model will do. So Prepare is a school psychologist. And when I say partner, we're offering support in terms of funding for the materials. And you all are supporting the presenter who is coming. And she is actually one of the writers of the curriculum. We have a coup in getting her, quite frankly. She was available the dates that we are having it. And so she's coming in mid-September. So it's September 12th, 13th, and 14th. And September the 13th is the larger training where we're hoping that school personnel, administrators, SROs, and we're working the details out, but we're hoping that they're going to join us on those days. And Sonia and I are scheduled to work on that on Friday in terms of the who's. And so when I talk about Aztec, I think about my colleagues. So my exact position up north was responsible for the reunification after Aztec, was responsible for figuring out how to work with families, identifying what's going on, how they continue to offer that mental health after the fact. The great news is Las Cruces Public Schools, as the second largest school district in our state, we're going to be on it. We're doing that. That's coming up this school year. And I'm really excited about the opportunity. quite frankly, it's been a long time coming. And the fact that I've been able to work so easily and just in a really cohesive way with the staff has been something that's pretty big. And this is a good example of why I think Sonia's position is important. So it's not in the last 10 years that staff has not been concerned about it. The counselors have been concerned, well, what do we do after? It's that there's been nobody to necessarily focus specifically on some of these larger systemic change things that we need to do. So the fact that I can call Sonia and say, hey, what about this? And she says, that sounds like a great idea. Let me run it by this. Let me do this. Let me do the research. And we get together and then here it is. It's coming. So I want to thank you all for supporting her position as well as, Amy and Dr. Lozano. Also Todd Gregory. Of course, he's going to be a huge part of this because he is our security guard. Is he still here? Yes, he's in the corner. Hi, Todd. As well as Sandy Pugh, because nurses are often the backbone of a school. If you don't have a mental health person there, who do we go to, right? So it's the nurse. So I'm super excited about it. As you can tell, this is, again, when I say it's been a long time coming, that's why I'm so excited about it. The Prepare curriculum embeds mental health first aid, as well as the CISM, which is critical incident response. And so those things are embedded in the training, which is exciting because there'll be a formalized way that we do it, as well as have some of our community partners like fire, police, Doña Ana County Emergency Management will hopefully be there that day to support those kind of bones that are in there in terms of how it plays out. And I'm open for any questions if you have any questions. Is there something I didn't? Oh, do you want the slides that go with what I'm saying?
Or it's just the training.
Okay, those are the dates,
and,
yes.
And who.
Yes, thank you. So this is taken directly from the Prepare website, and so this is in an ideal world if we were to craft what exactly we would want, but we are flexible in some of the roles because we also know you all have to continue running the schools, and so we will work through this, and I'm really excited to know we'll have a good representation from each of each of those demographics.
And it should say Wednesday, September 12th and Friday, September 14th is the workshop for that target audience, which is a smaller workshop that's more specified on mental health. Whereas Thursday, September 13th, that is really for administrators, SROs, and hopefully one counselor or social worker to come, and then community partners as well.
Right, and I would also encourage if there's school board members that have a specific interest in crisis response. Now, I always want to say, like, crisis response, if a young person would come to me and I was concerned about them being suicidal, some would say that's a crisis response. This is recovery. This is after an event. I want to be clear because there's a whole other way that you all do things connected to triaging a suicidal student, and that's separate from this. This is response and recovery after an event. But yeah, we have switched around days. The good thing is we're all flexible and we've worked through it. And so Thursday is the larger training that will include, and hopefully again, a representative from the school board. It is all day, and the trainer is pretty strict about if you sign out, you're not going to get your credit unless you're there the entire day. And she was very clear about that. So keep that in mind. And I think we're done unless you all have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
your
the
work.
collaboration.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
We really appreciate the collaboration.
Appreciate you as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for addressing this massively important topic.
Yes, now's the time. That's the thing. I think that we have seen the tone and temperature of our country change because of the large-scale events that have happened and our concern for young people. So this is if we're going to do it, this is the time to do it. So it's going to be great.
Thank you for your enthusiasm and motivation.
That's me. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. President, that concludes Dr. Lozano's presentation.
I see that. So we're going to move to board items, new business. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And with permission, Dr. Sanchez is going to talk us through some policy revisions.
Mr. President, members of the board, perhaps not quite as engaging a conversation as we just had, but we'll try to wade through policy a little bit here. As part of the board's policy review cycle, policy IJJ, textbook selection, adoption, and use is presented for discussion and first reading. The policy was last reviewed by the Board of Education in 2011 and proposed changes better reflect current practice, and future direction is suggested by 2 board members. In fact, the purpose statement now includes student learning needs as a significant component in the selection of instructional materials. The background statement now includes a reference to the New Mexico Constitution that addresses equity for Spanish speakers in our public schools. This section also includes a statement that instructional materials must address the diverse language needs of students. Changes to the position statement include references to the Associate Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction as the responsible officer for the adoption process, expands the evaluation team to include content experts, teachers, appropriate bilingual staff with expertise in assessing language quality of texts and materials, and that selected materials will support the district's adopted curriculum. Now requires that the review process include the review of available Spanish materials, and that Spanish materials, if available, be included in the purchase recommendation, and adds a requirement that the Board of Education shall be notified of the adoption process and provided the opportunity to review all instructional materials prior to selection. As with all changes to policy, once this goes forward through its cycle of 3 readings, the regulation will specify procedures to adjust any changing requirements that the board may have. With that, Mr. President, I stand for any questions.
How would you like us to send any suggestions or whatever insights we might have with regard to this policy? Should we send them directly to you?
Mr. President, that would be a great idea. If you could send me individually as emails, if you have any comments that you want me to consider and to add, I can report on that back to the full board at 2nd reading.
Okay, that sounds a pretty good plan. Okay, then maybe we should, we'll do that, and then let's move on to the next one.
Mr. President, as part of the board's policy review cycle, policy IHAM, health education, is presented for discussion in 1st reading. The policy was last reviewed by the Board of Education in 2013, and proposed changes better reflect current practice and direction as suggested by board members. In effect, the purpose statement now includes the requirement that a health education program is implemented as an integral part of students' general education. The original background statement is stricken in its entirety and replaced with a more current definition of a comprehensive school health program. The key change is the health program promotes the optimal physical, emotional, social, and educational development of students. Changes to the position statement requires that all adopted textbooks and related instructional materials be aligned to all required components of the New Mexico adopted health standards. This will be further elaborated in the regulation, where we will outline those general things that we must cover. Requires that all health textbooks and resources used in health education classes be posted on the district website, and that's important to alert parents to the fact. And we clarify the language that allows a parent to submit a written request stating their reasons for exempting the child from a specific portion of the health education curriculum. And we took off some language there that really was not appropriate about religious beliefs and things like that. With that, Mr. President, we stand for any questions.
Okay, we will definitely, we'll respond. Oh, okay.
And it's more of a comment. I think that after the conversation we just had, it goes to show that this will work so much better with that it aligns with the curriculum, et cetera, the standards, and it works with our restorative justice plans and the conversations that we're hoping will be had at schools.
I hope so.
Yes, and we'll get
All right.
back to you with any comments we might have.
Please get back to us, and I'll make a statement. These will go to 2nd reading. They'll be posted on the website for any public comment that parents or community members or teachers may want to make. The next policy up for review is policy BID, Board Compensation, Employment, and Expenses, is presented for discussion in first reading. The policy was first approved by the Board of Education in 2008 and has not had a review since the time of adoption. In effect, the purpose statement is rewritten to reflect the intent of the policy to establish guidelines for board members' compensation, employment, and reimbursement of expenses. Changes to the position statement provides that with prior written approval of the superintendent, Board of Education members may be reimbursed actual expenses in lieu of per diem rates when overnight travel is required. Clarifies statutory requirements for reimbursements of actual expenses when it comes to meals. When approved, are $30 for in-state travel and $45 for out-of-state travel. Actually, when you apply for actuals, and Ed and I spent a lot of time talking about this, that really is more towards travel and lodging. But the state has specified what the limit is for meals in state and out of state. The policy further stipulates the requirement that once actual expenses have been approved, that board members must submit receipts for the actual meal and lodging expenses incurred, and it will specify the process used in the event of the loss of original receipts, and you have to make a case to the superintendent of severe hardship. And that actually comes out of the state procurement code, which I think is an interesting statement. But anyway, I didn't make it up.
Okay.
All right. Again, this will go to second reading and will be posted on the website for anyone to comment on.
I kind of want to lose one on purpose.
Let's all do it on one.
And Dr. Ewing will have to rule in favor of the hardship.
She doesn't pass.
I think that's funny.
I just stopped turning in meal receipts. Ed negates everything I send down there anyway.
Dr. Sanchez, I just want to make one comment with
Yes,
regard to the title, where it says board compensation. In the policy, it specifically states that there is no compensation.
Yes.
Mr. President, that wasn't changed from the last policy, and that is a position that the board has always taken. And by approving this, you would again approve that you would not receive compensation for attending board meetings.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm in support of that, but I just wanted to clarify that, the title might give the impression that there is compensation.
Unless you want to change it.
Yes, Mr. Castro.
I'd like to make a comment regarding that. I think a compensation should be considered whenever the current public school budget crisis is over, and our district can be our district budget is restored to acceptable levels. At that time, the policy should be revised and amended to include a fair compensation for the board.
Mr. President, Mr. Castro, I'd be happy to include that in the language of the policy if you send that to me directly, or we can visit, and so I capture your thoughts accurately.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. President, members of the board.
Mr. Ellison is squirming over there.
Don't get excited
He's adding
yet.
up numbers already.
It's only first reading, Ed, so you can get excited third reading, and that's when you get excited. All right. First reading, the last policy for first reading is IKAB, grading and reporting. This, again, we're bringing forward to you as part of your policy review cycle. The policy was last reviewed by the Board of Education in 2015, and proposed changes reflect practice in grading and reporting. In effect, the purpose statement now includes wording that indicates assessment practices be continuous and meaningful. And that was a very powerful word to include there. Changes to the position statement include: statement has been modified to add greater clarity to the position statements. For instance, it reflects current practice in place for the past year regarding the printing of elementary report cards, and that all report cards at the middle and high school level are available in Parent View, which is available at our LCPS student information system. But the language also allows parents to request a printed report card from their child's school should they need one. Removes redundant language regarding procedures for a requested change in final grades, as these procedures are outlined in the regulation accompanying this policy and also referenced in the policy. And that basically means that really the only person in the state of New Mexico that can really change a grade is the teacher who issued the grade. In the case of a mistake, state statute is very clear. And it also allows, in the absence of the teacher, say the teacher moves, it would have provisions for how the principal would review the grade book and potentially make any changes. And we will outline that very specifically, word for word from regulation in the our own regulation. The change also reflects that a final exam shall not count for more than 20% of the final grade, as this is how the district's grade book is set up. And the teachers use that now, so it would be difficult for them not to follow that, but we thought we'd put it in the policy. With that, Mr. President, this again will go to second reading, be posted on the website for any comment. And again, I would welcome any comments that the board might have to send to me individually, and I'll try to reflect them as best I can.
I was a little confused about, a student not being required to take 2 final exams. It seemed to me that, if the state is requiring the end of course exam, then that's done, right? There's no question after that.
That's when that conversation came up, because in the old days, teachers used to write their own final exams.
Right.
Now that now that our students are having to take end of course exams in many courses, the board at the time when they reviewed that original policy did not want students to have to take 2 final exams.
Right. Anyway, can we take a look at that particular statement in here? And just, there was something in the wording that I found confusing.
Certainly, Dr. Wendy and Christina Mullins and I and Dr. Lozano will all get together and crank it out.
Okay.
And remember, not every course has a state end of course exam.
Right. Right.
So we'll have to do the wording such that those without state assessments, the teacher can certainly give a final.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Any more
President.
questions? Dr. Sanchez, thank you so much for reviewing these policies. It's incredibly tedious and also incredibly important to update our policies because they do impact our day-to-day lives here in the district. Thank you. Where are we? Oh, okay.
Discussion of the board retreat date.
Yeah, we're going to have a discussion and selection of a board retreat date. So I know we do have a date in mind. Not that I remember it. Was it September?
Mr.
Was it Friday, the
President, if I may.
21st?
We were looking at October, the early part of October, if that so meets the approval of the board. The reason we're suggesting early October, the district is in the process of looking at our accreditation model. And so we would like to have someone come and speak to the board about the accreditation model, what it means, how much we're paying, what it's used for, what the role of teachers versus principals would be versus central office staff, why it's important. And if we were to bring someone, we were thinking early October would be okay. And it would also just give us some more time to prepare. We would like to show you what we have done so far as the leadership team in establishing our priorities for each of our individual units or divisions, but we've done that all based on board goals. And we think we can have all that work done by the end of September.
Okay, so I do remember now. It was October 12th that
Yes,
we were
sir.
thinking of. Great, because I had mentioned something about some holiday associated with it.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to bring
You
that
did.
up again.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So October 12th. It's a Friday. We thought Friday was a good day.
I'm good for me.
Is everybody good?
I'm
I'm good.
Okay, we have now a retreat date.
Do we have to vote? A red item. So we're good.
Okay, we're going to go to the next item. So we had a discussion during executive session on the superintendent's contract. And at this point, I am going to entertain a motion to approve the changes to the superintendent's employment contract as discussed in executive session, specifically granting 28 days of annual leave and 14 days of sick leave and salary to stay the same.
I so move.
Second?
It has been moved and second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, no opposed. It is unanimous. Mr. Castro.
Oh, no, I don't oppose, but I just want to make one thing known, that our superintendent is not asking for a raise. I wanted people to know that.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to call Dr. Sanchez back.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, we're talking about policy BDG, legal services. This policy is brought forward for second reading, and no comments have been received from the public. Revisions to policy BDG were introduced for first reading and open meeting on June 19th as part of the board's ongoing review of policies. The only change to the policy from the version introduced during first reading is the change suggested by President Frank during the board meeting in the position statement 2C that deletes the word refuse and it replaces it with choose not.
Okay.
With that, Mr. President, we stand for any questions.
No questions.
There appear to be no questions.
This will move on to third reading and again be posted on the district's website for public comment. Mr. President, this policy CBI, Superintendent Evaluation, is brought forward for second reading and consideration for approval by the Board of Education. The approval is requested after the second reading to ensure that current practice is aligned to board policy, and you have an upcoming discussion in B.4. The board has the authority to approve a policy after second reading if the board determines that it is in the best interest of the school district to take immediate action. And so you're actually taking action or discussing later in B4, this policy directly impacts that. Since first reading, no comments have been received from the public. Revisions to policy CBI were introduced for first reading and open meeting on June 19th. The only change made to the policy are results of board's discussion where it was requested that all evaluations be placed in the official personnel file maintained by the Human Resource Office. And those would be the evaluations of the superintendent. So that change was made after your discussion in first reading. With that, Mr. President, we stand for questions and potential approval of this policy this evening.
Are there any questions?
No questions.
I just had one
Yes,
suggestion
Mr. Castro.
for number 2C. So we meet with the superintendent to discuss performance and consider his personal views about his performance. I don't know if that's already included in there.
That was in the
That's not relevant.
Mr. President, Mr. Castro, basically, if you're talking about 2C, the board shall meet in closed session with the superintendent to discuss the superintendent's performance. And since the word discuss is used there, that should be a two-way conversation between the board and the superintendent, so he responds and you ask questions. So that may take care of it.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're ready to vote on this. So I will entertain a motion to approve the second reading of policy CBI and approve policy CBI due to it being in the best interest of the district to take immediate action to align with current practices.
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Mr. Castro, seconded by Vice President Dahlman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? This motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you again, Dr. Sanchez. Okay, we are going to move on to 4B3, discussion on drafting a resolution regarding family separations. So I believe everybody on the board has received a copy of that.
Yes.
Okay, and, I have some concerns about that. So I produced an alternative to that, which eliminates, I think, any possibility of it be considered a political statement. I think there are two issues here that we can deal with. I think it is not political to request one's government to follow its laws. We have a law with regard to asylum, and to pass a resolution that insists that that law be followed is certainly not a political statement. The second aspect has to do with the separation of children from their parents. That is an issue that we have personally experienced in Las Cruces. It has a profound impact on the education of our students, and not just the students that are separated, but all the other students who possibly would be living in fear. And I don't think I think wanting children to be with their parents is also not a very political issue. It's a human rights issue, and it's certainly an educational issue. So I think if we adopt a resolution that sticks to those topics and gives as many local examples as we can on how this has impacted on us, I think we could have something that would be very positive. So I don't know where to go from here.
I'd like to say something. I agree with you 100%. I think that one of the questions that I think was asked is, why are we doing this? Well, we are here representing the children, the 25,000 students in Las Cruces. And that is what we care about. It's the success of them in school. Now, if we do not hold our government accountable for not following the rules of law, say, for instance, the Plyer versus Doe, Plyer v. Doe, or the Flores Flores settlement, that children should not be separated from their families for more than 20 days. I'm very proud of it because I have nothing to do with it, but it has my last name. If they don't follow these, and then we look at what these people have presented to us on adverse childhood experiences, and here we're creating a whole 2,000 adverse child experiences in our community. Not all of them are here, but throughout the Southwest and in the United States. We're creating these adverse experiences. The trauma of separating from your parents at a young age. We've all seen the pictures, we've heard the children crying. We cannot not act. So that is when somebody asks me, why are you doing it? It's not because I'm trying to buck what or to make a political statement. It's not about that. It's about doing what's right. Doing what's right for our students here in Las Cruces. And we may be missing a few examples that have directly affected us, but we all know that they're there. We all know that a father was followed to a school while he dropped off his son at Centennial High School, and then he was taken. He was arrested. We all know, I know families that are afraid to go anywhere because they're just afraid that any stop will separate their families. We know that this is happening, and we just have to act. We cannot be quiet. We cannot be silent. We cannot be complicit. we do not support this action that they are doing. So that's why we have to do something. And perhaps the language can be changed a little bit. Like, we could even call this resolution a resolution supporting that families belong together. I have a little sticker from the Texas Civil Rights Project, families belong together. I think that's a beautiful statement right there. So I'm willing to work on this and to make it something that we can all support. Thank you.
Yeah, I would be glad to get together with Dr. Sanchez and keep working on this rather than, I'd like to table it for the next meeting, but, you know, I would just personally like to set that up and present some of the ideas I have. Okay, yes. Oh.
President Frank,
Vice President Dalton.
I'm going to be brief. I just want to say that this is a moral and ethical issue. It is not about blue or red. It is not about conservative or liberal. It's about saying no to yanking your kids away from you. It is about saying no to the government, to kidnapping children, because that's what they've done. And then the trauma that these children, even if they get reunified with their families again, they are carrying trauma for the rest of their lives. Not just the children, the parents as well. Because if you have kids and for 5 minutes that you can't find your child, you know what you go through. Can you imagine somebody yanking a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old away from you and not knowing where they are? You can only imagine how terrible that is. So I don't see this as a political gain of any sort or a political, perhaps a stand that we want to take as a board, because sooner or later we're going to have to support those children in our schools. And we will be ready because we are professionals. But what about those children that have been traumatized for the rest of their life? They've been scarred for the rest of their lives. Simply because a government, I don't know, I don't even want to get into that. But this isn't any political gain. And so I think that this is the right time to do this.
Mr. Castro.
Mr. President, yeah, I agree with and Maria. I definitely think that it would be irresponsible if we don't speak, and we speak loud. And I don't think we're being partisan at all. This is regarding a policy, and this regarding an action that was taken, and also we need to say something about urging the President of the United States take action to reunite those families. And I think that should be included. Thank you.
But are we in agreement to bring this back
Well, I want to thank
2 weeks from now?
Dr. Sanchez for working on this. I know this is really, it's a passionate statement so far, and I think we just need to make sure that our legal counsel is okay with it.
I actually don't think that we should change the title to make it comfortable for people that can't deal with this.
It's up to the whole group. I mean, it was just a suggestion.
So, Mr. President, if we may, from the administration standpoint, we're willing to give more examples of how this affects students within the district so that we can show the board that as a leadership team, we are experiencing issues with children who have been separated from their families. And even I myself stood on the steps of the church with a student whose parents were taken from him. So we're happy to share those experiences. And if I may, Mr. President, I'm going to call on legal counsel just to give us a couple of words of guidance, Dr. Sanchez, as we begin working on a revision of the draft for you and the president, if we may.
Certainly.
So, Elena's going to move to the front just so she can have eye contact.
Okay.
President Frank, members of the board, first of all, thank you all for your commitment to children and your passion. It's what makes me so proud to stand here and serve all of you. I believe her name was Dr. Askin, is that correct? I wrote something down, and I actually wrote it on my notes for this part of the discussion, something that she said. She said, how do we respond to a crisis event that mitigates the trauma? And I really see that that's what you're trying to do. And so I can tell you from a human and a legal perspective, completely find that in line with your obligations and find it very appropriate. The one thing I would encourage you to do is take a look at in this process the policy JB that you've already adopted. And because I think that you have spoken very loudly about this issue already in very concrete ways. And so in policy, I want to remind you that policy is actually a stronger statement than resolution. And in fact, when you originally sought to address this issue, you sought to address it in resolution, and then you challenged yourselves and administration and me to bring before you even something higher than resolution, which was policy. And so one of the concrete questions I have, so that it doesn't become just rhetoric, is looking at, just like today we had incredibly intense conversation about, which was an accountability conversation to the board about how is administration taking your policy decision that suicide was going to be a priority, that restorative justice was going to be a priority, and you have, and then under Dr. Ewing's leadership, we've brought accountability to you at every single board meeting, with I think today being just absolutely amazing. So my suggestion to you is to start with policy JB. You've already hailed Plyler versus Doe. You've already said that the statement that the purpose of the policy is to ensure all students, regardless of the students or family members' immigration status, can safely access public education, including all the secondary benefits of public education. You've gone through that concretely and identified what those are. Benefits and services including free or reduced cost meals, transportation, healthcare, school nurse, school-based health center, extracurricular activities, non-academic services. So one of the things I'm suggesting to you is then hold the system accountable. Rather than continue to say we mean what we say, ask the question, how is this policy being implemented, carried out in the schools? Are we doing enough? What are the concrete examples that we're seeing in our community, and how are we responding, and is there further response that's needed, including across agencies? One of the things that you did concretely in the policy is require that MOUs involving safety and security reference this policy and ensure that when we enter into an agreement with the city, that the city understands what you expect on this issue. You've already done that, and I can represent to you in working with Deputy Superintendent Hawkes that in draft form, you'll ultimately see it. Every MOU involving safety and security has referenced your policy. So the only thing that again, I would encourage you to do is go back and don't back off of, but go deeper, lean deeper in to a policy that you've already adopted, and hold, rather than repeat it through resolution and restate it through resolution, ask for an accountability as to what is happening with this policy, just like you have with restorative justice, just like you have with student suicide. And then if there are areas where there's trauma identified and we don't have mental health systems in place to deal with it or something like that, then call for further action. So because I think that then removes it from any potential claim, empty or not, that this is rhetorical and partisan. I think you've taken some of the strongest action that I've seen of any school board across the country, and I applaud you for that. And so I would recommend that you look at what you've done and hold the system accountable, including the community and those community relationships that necessarily then impact our students and our families. I stand for questions.
Thank you for your point of view, and I appreciate it. We do need to keep policy JB present as we move forward. But one of the things we can do with this resolution is take it to the NMSBA. This is another thing, they're asking for resolutions. So this might be where we take this, the next step.
Absolutely.
So I feel that we're not just shouting into the wind. We have a place to take it to, and I know what they're going to do with it, But at least we've made the statement, and we carry the conversation further. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping will happen here.
President Frank.
Yes.
And one of the reasons that they're going to do that is because we don't have a seat in the legislative and resolution committee. And it's not just a matter of voting somebody on there, because they've asked people to sit in. They haven't asked us, but we, being the second largest district in New Mexico, we're not seated. We don't have a seat at that committee.
Oh, we need one.
And I think the purpose of the resolution is to expand the range of this policy, spread its its impact. So I think we do need the resolution.
Mr. President, as we continue working on whatever the resolution may look like, I'm very happy to ask Tiffany, Michael, and Heather if you would, first let me just give a directive in the kindest way possible. If you would send policy JB to all the principals and ask them to read it, and then in the next principals meeting, if you would be so kind as to go over that with them, and then in the next board meeting, we're going to ask you to just give the board an update on the fact that you have followed through with this, the training that you're doing. So I think what we'll start doing is in our board meetings, the way we do with Dr. Lozano and with Andres when he comes and gives the social justice updates, we'll ask you to give us an update as well. And then any situations or occurrences that are happening within the school buildings, you can update us with any issues that you have found regarding this policy, as well as how we're training not only principals, but assistant principals, counselors, and all of the faculty and staff in school buildings. Does that sound? Well, Mr. President, if that pleases the board, we will give you updates in addition to whatever you decide to do with your resolution.
Mr. President?
Go ahead. Yes.
Mr. Ewing, Dr. Ewing was.
Oh, no, I'm done. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I was reading Mr. Castro's note. He's passing me notes here.
Oh.
So, are there any more comments? So after the meeting, I will have a quick conversation with Dr. Sanchez, try to set up a time, and I think we can move on. Okay, well, thank you, board, for a very, very good conversation on this important matter. And now I need to find my agenda. So we have another discussion. This is on possible changes to the superintendent's evaluation instrument, including method and timeline. And since I was not involved in that discussion, okay, I'm going to have to pass that off, I think, to either, okay,
Yeah,
Vice President Dahlman.
I just have a quick comment on that. I met with Dr. Ewing, and we're just in the beginning stages of that, and I think what we decided is that we would like to have a survey done, climate of the principals, submitting information to include in the evaluation, and then also a separate survey from the board. So 2 surveys, and I believe that Dr. Prather in Albuquerque might be available to do that for us. And so I will be touching base with him tomorrow and give us an update next time around, if that is okay.
That sounds good. Okay. I have not received any public input. In fact, there's
No
very little of the public left.
Connie says
So
not that you guys aren't.
possibly the board needs to reflect, on its performance in terms of audience reaction. But that does bring us to adjournment, and I will entertain a
Mr.
motion.
President, if I may, I'm sorry. I will make this short. Dr. Lozano, would you like to introduce? We have one of our trainers here with us, and so Calvin, as I've said to you before, this is your home at any time you would like to make it your home, and there's a job for you here anytime you want to come work. So we just want to recognize you and say thank you for the training that you're going to be doing tomorrow. We've invited the board to attend that training with you, and we look forward to our continued work in restorative justice practices.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. That was incredibly important. I did attend a training with him in the spring, and it was extraordinary. So, thank you. Mr. Jaramillo, I am in the middle of my motion here, but go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. President, and I just want to take a point of privilege real quick, if I might.
Of course you might.
About a month ago, I as a graduate student at Erickson's, I was given an assignment as a final report to write a paper, and it had to do with bilingualism and that sort of stuff. And so I went to my friend and the expert that I said to help me guide me in finding a topic. And I went to Dr. Lozano, and Dr. Lozano got back with me, and he said this topic that I had never heard before, the word translanguaging, was in that topic there. And so I sent that off to my professor, and my professor was so excited that she actually shared her work back with me, her published work on this topic. So I said, oh, great, she's very excited, but really, thanks a lot, Roberto Lozano. He got me in a really tough situation here, right? That I'll be writing on what she's an expert at. So although I was excited, I was a little nervous. And so I just wanted to tell Dr. Lozano and also Dr. Hahn, they spent some time with me in their office last week, and really, I didn't even know how to ask questions. And so what they did is they gave me some foundations and really got me excited about some of the things that are happening in bilingualism and bilingual and that topic. And so I just wanted to say thank you for helping me and guiding me. And Dr. Hahn, I know you weren't expecting me or anything, and you came in and gave me about an hour of your time. And so with both of your guidance and your help and expertise, I was able to produce that documentation for my thing, and I will share it with you guys if I get a good grade. If I don't, then I'll say, well, I really didn't have anything in there. So anyway, I just want to take a point of privilege to say thank you to both of you for helping me with that. So.
And while we're recognizing people, how about recognizing all the people that are left in this room right here? Not the board. We have to be here, but the rest of you, thank you so much. For hanging in there. How about if we give them the board? Stand up. I want the board to stand. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, and now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.